Hi guys! Today we'll be recapping a story called The Peach of June. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot. Enjoy! Have you ever envisioned yourself in married life during your teenage years? Did you ever contemplate what it would be like to be married while you were a teenager? In this fantasy novel, when Leah Louis Riveron, the fourth daughter of the Riveron family, turns 17 years old, she can leave the island. A day comes when she can choose the person she wants to marry once in her life. During the summer on Riveron Island, the queen selects the men who wish to marry into the Riveron family, and then she takes a 3-month vacation. They call it Magic Summer. One of Leah's sisters gives her some advice. She tells her that the person she chooses will determine her life. However, she feels quite envious of her older sisters who have a lot of suitors. In her mind, she is not as pretty as her sister. Looks aren't everything, but for her, they are important. She wants to marry a very handsome man who has a good personality, just like her sister's husband. The question is, would that person propose to her or not? With that, she is determined that she does not want to leave her life to chance. At the mansion, 2 of Leah's suitors do their best to impress her. Count Rosemond shows off his wealth by talking about gems. Count Antony Guel expresses his love for her by writing poems for her. The boys keep pushing themselves towards her, and it's getting overwhelming. Shortly, she excuses herself to get some fresh air. The 2 insist on coming, but she wants to be alone for now. While walking alone around the garden, she admits to herself that she's getting tired of how Count Rosemond only talks about jewelry, and Count Antony's poems are too childish. It's a one-time marriage, and she just wants someone who is a good person. Shortly, she bumps into Julien Renault, a handsome duke who's also one of her suitors. Oh, there's one more. He actually has something to give her, which is a surprise. Duke Renault hands her a peach, assuming that it's from Renault's estate. Leah's right and is really soft. He can't cut it with a knife, so he decides to peel it for her. She tries to stop him, worried that his hands will get dirty, but she's unsuccessful. Looking into his eyes, she doubts that he can harm anyone. His actions, words, looks, and everything else makes her interested in him. For a moment, she dreams of marrying him, and they live happily ever after. However, that imagination stays as it is. Since then, Duke Renault has kept avoiding her. Because of his behavior, she wonders if she ever did anything wrong. What could possibly be the reason? It doesn't make sense. In the middle of a night full of confusion, Antony suddenly appears at Leah's window to give her a poem. As he delivers his poem, she realizes that what matters is the person who truly likes her. For one reason, she starts dating Antony and spends more time with him. She likes his kindness in everything. On the last day of the magical summer, it's time for her to decide who she will marry. Each of her suitors expresses how they will make her happy, except for Duke Renault, who's not moving an inch. Eventually, Leah chooses Antony. Since he has both money and beauty, she wants him to hug her tenderly, just as he promised. Just as she believes she's made the right call, a sudden twist dismantles her plans. In September, at the Cathedral Guel, Leah is wearing a beautiful white gown. Her sister notices that she seems to be worried about something. Despite saying that she's happy since Antony does everything for her, she still looks bothered. How sure is she that they truly love each other, though? Well, in her defense, she never really knew what love was. All she knows is that she likes his kind words and that he listens to everything she says. Her basis for love is that he treats her so well and that his actions shake her. I beg to disagree. Poor Leah, she doesn't know what true love is. She swears to her sister that she'll be happy all her life. Unfortunately, none of the things mentioned matter anymore in the present. Now that Leah's about to turn 40, she deeply regrets choosing Antony. Looking back on the past, she realizes that the man who promised to make her happy was just a man with no talent, money, or virtue. All she knows is that he is spending money on gambling and writing poetry. Men are only good at the beginning. After getting married within 1 year, the dowry was blown away because of gambling. As a result, their orchard is left alone because they couldn't afford the maintenance. At present, Leah appears to be a dejected wife abandoned by her husband. That's what happens when you're with the wrong person. While eating a meal together, she suggests going back to Riveron Island since all the estates they have will be sold. As soon as she mentions Antony working for her father, he gets mad and throws the plate. Gosh, he's the worst! Luckily, someone drops by and intervenes, putting an end to his aggressiveness. Hector, a knight in the service of Duke Reynald, delivers a message indicating the Duke's intention to acquire Antone's orchard. In exchange, he presents a substantial amount of gold coins. Without delay, Antone surrenders the orchard. Meanwhile, Leah wonders why Duke Reynald wants to buy it when he already has a much larger orchard. She pushes aside her thoughts as her husband embraces her and happily plans to treat her to her favorite meal. With that opportunity, she sees it as a fresh beginning, hoping that their relationship will flourish further and all will be well. To her disappointment, all that money vanished in under 6 months. She regrets her actions and feels foolish for expecting otherwise. People really can't change that easily. She does everything to be a good wife to him, but he doesn't do the same thing. Antone keeps pushing her way until she finally gets enough. She ventures into the forest, believing that a comforting embrace from her husband will suffice. As tears stream down her cheeks, she discovers a lavender in full bloom, just in time for her birthday. She starts questioning and regretting her life decisions. Looking at her life right now, she's miserable. If only she could go back in time, she would never have chosen the kind of marriage she currently has. At that moment, she longs to turn back the clock as she weeps beside the lavender. As if by magic, she hears her sister's voice calling out from the garden. Her sister finds her behavior odd, akin to someone awakening from a nightmare and bombarding her with questions. In response, she reveals her age as 17. It turns out that the lavender really grants Leah's wish. She indeed returned to her 17-year-old life while celebrating her 40th birthday. She's about to experience a magic summer for the second time. Up until now, she couldn't believe that whatever was happening in her life was real. She's filled with such joy that she finds herself unable to contain her laughter. Soon after, Antone brings her back to the present with his words. The same scenario from her past life happens all over again. Leah excuses herself from her suitors and proceeds to walk around the garden. This time, she takes time to appreciate the beautiful weather. Momentarily, just as she thinks about Duke Reynald, he appears in front of her. He then gives her a peach, just like before. And after that, he ignores her for the second time. On the other hand, Count Rosamund presents her with all the valuable gems from his collection, and Antone's poems remain as immature as ever. Everything appears to be following the same pattern as before. Nevertheless, today she resolves to alter everything. 3 months later comes the engagement day. Antone gives Leah flowers and promises that he will definitely make her happy for the rest of her life. He thinks that he's worthy to be her husband just because he's willing to give her the most loving hugs. He's all words for sure. Fortunately, she's learned her lesson. As she should. She is now aware that money is the root of all things, and love is no exception. Count Rosamund is much better than him, but more importantly, he's richer. He then takes this opportunity to show how he's worthy of being her husband. He promises to give her all the gems if she's willing to tie the knot with him. Moreover, he doesn't care about the dowry from the Riveron family. All Count Rosamund wants is to have her by his side. Truthfully, he has always appreciated Leah's beauty more than any gem in his collection. He'll buy her everything she wants without hesitation. I don't trust him. If there's one thing she learned from her previous incarnation, it's the realization that money is everything. As long as she has money, such misfortunes will never happen to me. In addition, she doesn't love him, so he will never get the chance to hurt her. With that certainty, she chooses to marry Count Rosamund this time. However, once again, Leah's marriage ends in failure. Poor Leah. I feel so sad for her. At the very least, he honored his promise and cherished her like a rare jewel. Among all the gems he possessed, she was the most treasured. She was so valuable that he kept her confined in a room akin to a gem secured in a sturdy box. The maids around Leah treat her like a doll. It's like she's an object that needs to be decorated to turn into a stunning stone. Not once did he take into consideration what she truly wanted. Presently, Rosamund, who's with 2 other girls, compliments her for sparkling even more than usual, especially since it's her special day. He introduces the girls as his business partners. Consequently, he tells her that her birthday party has been canceled because of a business trip, which is obviously a lie. I totally agree. All these men do is lie. Leah's not that naive to know that he's probably busy hanging out with those girls. It's not the first time he's lied to her, but she continues to act clueless. What's even worse is that Count Rosamund forbids her from leaving the mansion, not even for a visit to a relative. That's when she realizes that even though she's living a prosperous life, she's not happy with it at all. Now everything seems to be her problem. The outcome of her 2 failed marriages leaves her feeling foolish and responsible. As she wallows in her room, Lavender appears just like before. For the second time, she wishes to return once again. She swears to herself that she will never make the same stupid mistake again. Like magic, Leah's wish is granted. She finds herself back in her 17-year-old life once more, standing in the garden with her sister. However, this time, she confides in her sister that she no longer desires to marry. During the Riveron family dinner, Duke Riveron, Leah's father, announces that her suitors are coming. Upon hearing that information, her older sisters start giving her advice. Everyone seems to be pressuring her into getting married at such a young age. Shortly after, Isabella, the third daughter of Riveron, notices that she hasn't eaten much. She firmly announces to the whole family that she won't get married. Her statement surprised everyone in the dining room. Madame Riveron, Leah's mother, joins the conversation to clarify things. Certainly, her final decision is to live alone. However, her father becomes upset upon hearing this. He holds his wife responsible for their child's upbringing, especially because of her choice not to marry. As the Duke, he thinks that it's inappropriate for a lady to live alone. After he storms out, her sisters attempt to console her. They encourage her to follow her own desires. At just 17 years old, standing up for herself as she did earlier is something to take pride in. Meanwhile, their mother scolds Leah for saying such nonsense. She blames her for making the Duke mad. No matter how much she tries to persuade her to change her mind, it will not work. Afterward, while her nanny is dressing her up, she becomes curious about the reason why she doesn't want to get married. Honestly, she's now too scared of marriage because of her past. Even if she doesn't get married, it's not a big deal because she still has a lot of people who hug her with love, just like her nanny. Despite her statement, a lot of men come as expected. Both Antoinette and Rosamond continue their usual behavior, unchanged from before. Meanwhile, Duke Raynal remains as strikingly handsome as ever. As he offers her the peach, she thinks that he shows no concern for her. In this new existence, she interacts with him in a distinct manner, and her reaction differs from her previous behavior. He also makes an expression that is new to her, which is unexpected. Oh, something has truly changed. She tries to reach the peach, but she accidentally grabs his arm. Her gesture makes him nervous. Obviously, he seems different from the first time they met. Julian unintentionally addresses her by her first name, but she quickly catches it. He promptly apologizes. Now, she realizes that her previous perception of him was merely based on prejudice, as he actually proves to be quite decent and polite. Eventually, she grants him permission to address her by her first name. He also brings up his awareness of her reluctance to marry, which surprises her. She wonders why he's concerned, when in reality, he has no intention of proposing to her in the first place. It's merely her assumption, as Julian is unaware of the subject she's discussing. To shield herself, she avoids engaging with him, anticipating that he might once again disregard her. Unintentionally, she announces her inner thoughts, which he picks up on. He perceives her words as reminiscent of someone torn between the past and the future. Through this observation, she feels compelled to share a funny story with him. Leah confides everything with Julian about her first and second lives. It seems easier for her to share things with him compared to Beth, her nanny, and the person she trusts the most. Oh, he should be honored for that. Thinking that they won't meet each other again, she tells him her story. His calm eyes affect her in a way that makes her calmer. He's having second thoughts about whether to believe her or not, but eventually believes her in the end. His only question is why she didn't marry him. Once again, she clarifies that he ignored her and never even proposed marriage. Yet in the midst of their conversation, she can't help but notice how handsome he is. I know, right? My gosh, who permitted him to be this gorgeous? As she's admiring his face, he gets closer and closer, and their faces are only inches away from each other. It turns out he's just trying to take off the leaf stuck to her face. Suddenly, he poses an unexpected question, curious if she was happy in her former life. However, she prefers not to dwell on the past and therefore avoids answering the question. However, there's one more thing he's intrigued about. He wonders if she ever experienced death and then returned. To answer him, she was able to return naturally. She then elaborates on how earnestly she prayed to the lavender on her 40th birthday. The moment she opened her eyes, she found herself unexpectedly reverting to a 17-year-old girl. It's her third time coming back. She must have tolerated a lot. She surely did. Leah teases she's a lot older than him. However, she notices that he also has deep eyes. From her perspective, she doesn't believe that a longer life necessarily improves someone's personality. He'll grasp this when he observes her father. He chuckles as he asks if she hates her father. Truth is, Julian harbors resentment towards his father as well, so they both have that in common. His father's occupation in the Imperial Palace keeps him incredibly busy. Furthermore, he has no memories of his mother since she passed away when he was just a child. OMG, it's like they're totally hitting it off. They're finally spilling stories about themselves. Despite her father not being particularly family-oriented, Leah fondly recalls one occasion when he visited her while she was unwell and gently rubbed her head. It left a lasting impression on her. On the other hand, Julian's cherished memory of his father involves the nightly walks he used to take with his mother. As he grew older, he joined them, holding his parents' hand as they strolled together. At the end of each walk, his father would place his hands on his mother's back before hugging her. In a similar manner, Julian hugs Leah, replicating his parents' affectionate gesture. Moreover, he recalls how his father used to hug him with just one arm. This prompts Leah to contemplate doing the same to him at times. Despite his smile, his eyes betray a sense of loneliness and longing for his father. Momentarily, as they walk, someone suddenly calls out Leah's name. Julian expresses how happy he is that Leah is comfortable telling him interesting stories about her life. He then invites her to have dinner with him. Before she can answer, Beth calls out to her. He also invites her for a morning walk, and she immediately accepts both. In addition, he asks her to wear something light blue for the walk the next day. Afterward, Leah asks her nanny to bring her the light blue dress to wear to dinner with her father and suitors. They are already starting when Antony arrives late. He is audacious enough to not pay attention even if he's late. By the way, Julian notices that she's wearing the shirt she's supposed to wear for their walk tomorrow morning. He also brings the news to Duke Riveron that he has found the lost item. As soon as the meal begins, the obvious stories pass. Mostly, Duke Riveron takes the conversation, and both Antony and Rosamond reply foolishly. Meanwhile, Julian is staring at Leah, which makes her flutter. Her mind travels to different places. Originally, she had no intention of marrying him. Girl, are you sure about that? Once dinner is over, Duke Riveron extends an invitation for everyone to gather in the lobby for tea. As she excuses herself to return to her room for a change of attire, her two suitors promptly offer their coats to her. Shortly after she declines their offer, Julian takes the opportunity to take her home as he wraps his coat around her. Since her father has something to discuss with Antony and Rosamond, he trusts the Duke of Reynald to help his daughter. It seems like Duke Riveron approves of Julian, hey! While walking, they talk about different things. Leah's father seems to be fond of him because his family boasts the largest territory in the kingdom. Also, she mentions that she feels more comfortable with him after sharing her story earlier. He surprises her by inquiring about her level of contentment with him. Julian is curious about her opinion of him, indicating that her thoughts hold significance for him. This unexpected question from him catches her off guard, signaling a shift in their relationship dynamics. As he gazes at her with affectionate eyes, it fills her with a sense of warmth and excitement. Before dinner, Leah is looking at the mirror, seeing if the blue dress fits her, when all of a sudden her nanny and Muriel drag her to help her prepare. The light blue dress complements her pale white skin. She really is so beautiful in that dress! You totally rock that blue, Leah! Her nanny even jokes around, asking her not to let the food get on that dress. In the middle of helping Leah, her possible marriage with Duke Reynald suddenly becomes their topic. Leah's reaction goes sour. She's uncomfortable with the topic. She looks at them and says that she doesn't want to get married and walks away. Ever since that happened in the past, she makes sure to remind herself that she won't be acting recklessly again. She married Antony because she wanted a romantic partner, but he's not that kind of person. So she thought that having money was enough and married Rosamond, yet still was all in vain. Throughout that time, Julian ignored her. It's a little different this time, though. This time, he seemed more affectionate, and she even heard some special words from him. Because this time, he clearly likes you. Open your eyes, sister! For a moment, out of curiosity, she got a little interested. However, she should stay awake and never make any reckless choices again. But why? Why in this lifetime is he looking at her with those loving eyes? Why when she has decided not to enter the world of marriage? He's making it hard for her to make a decision, not when he showers her with affection. In the present time, as they are walking home, Leah shares with Julian how she fell in love the first time she saw him in her first life. Well, if a 17-year-old like her sees a handsome man like him, of course she'll fall in love, right? But it's her third time turning 17. If she really is a 17-year-old, she wouldn't be able to say something like that in the first place. Julian teases her for that, but Leah also adds how he was so cold back then. He was avoiding her like she was some type of insect or poop. But why did he still propose? Until now, she always thought of that. Before they even know it, they already arrive at Leah's house. Leah's about to enter the door but quickly faces and walks towards Julian. It's pretty clear that they still want to spend time together. They chat for a bit, but when it's already time for Leah to go, Julian asks her to take off her jacket. He wants to see her with that beautiful light blue dress before he comes back. Oh, my boy is clearly madly in love. Julian stares at her for a long time. When Leah finally points out how much he's looking at her, he makes eye contact and smiles as he says she's beautiful. Leah asks him why he makes her wear these dresses. All Julian says is that because she seems to look fine with it. She really is, but for Leah, it's like he's talking as if he had seen her in that outfit before. As Leah's scanning her outfit, Julian can't help but stare once again. It looks as if he's staring at the most beautiful woman he has ever seen in his whole life. Leah accidentally catches him staring at her. He doesn't seem embarrassed. Instead, he locks his eyes on her and whispers to himself that she's really beautiful. Still as beautiful as ever. However, Leah catches it. She reads his lips, and Julian just laughs at her, saying that she's still as smart as before. Still? Leah wonders. Come to think of it, he's kind of someone who knows her from before, doesn't he? If what she's thinking is correct, does Julian know? Strange, he must have known about Leah's past. Ever since the both of them met, Julian has always been talking like an acquaintance of hers, so she asks him if perhaps they met at Bella's wedding. At that time, she read a congratulatory poem written by herself, so he must have seen that. Julian is entertained by how she explains things, just agreeing with everything she says. I didn't expect this to be what she thinks as well. He also explains to her that he just wants to see her wearing that dress again. He thinks that's enough for him if he can see that image again. It'll be hard for him to give up if he looks at her appearance. Leah seems confused. Give up on what? Julian is thinking about wanting to have her. He looks at Leah and expresses his feelings for her. In his eyes, she's the most beautiful person in the world. Unique personality, free soul, strong bigotry. Ah, he is so sweet. My heart is literally racing as the scene unfolds. Everything about her is different from the rest of the world. She deserves to have the most perfect life partner. It's a pity that Julian thinks it can't be him, but he swears he will work hard to be that person for her. Suddenly, he kneels on the ground and opens a small box. There's a ring inside. His eyes are full of love and sincerity. He looks Leah in the eyes and promises to live for her forever, whether it's this lifetime or the next. Both his body and heart are hers, and asks her to marry him. I love how sincere he is. Where can I get my own Julian? Leah is still in shock, but she already knows what to answer. She doesn't want to get married because she has never been happy to be married before. Julian tries his best to change her decision, but Leah is too afraid to make the wrong choice again since her choices are always wrong. Leah wants him to go find someone better, but for him, there's no one better than her. He loves her from the very beginning, and he only wants her. Gradually, Leah is a bit convinced by his words when all of a sudden, a realization hits her. The problem in her past relationships is that she feels nothing for the people she has been married to before. She always thinks about what they did for her, and it's good that they love her. It's good that they were nice to her. But as time went on, what they did for her disappeared, and she was miserable because she didn't have feelings for them in the first place. She had never loved them even once, and that was her ultimate misfortune. If she had fallen in love, maybe they would treat her differently. Suddenly, Julian looks at her and asks her to not worry about it because she will love him. Gosh, I love the confidence. For what reason does he speak with certainty? But maybe he's right. What if it's Julian? Under the full moon with summer night air touching her skin, Julian's confident low voice somehow gives her a certain effect. Maybe he's right. Maybe this time things will get better. She married Antoine because he had the most feelings for her, but she was never moved by him. After marrying Antoine, marrying Rosamund was the best reason to make money. She knew herself that she didn't love him, and that was a reckless act. So in her third life, she's determined not to get married. All of a sudden, she remembers the moment Julian said that she would be loved. And just with that, her face turns hot as her cheeks reddens. Just thinking about Julian makes her heart flutter. As she notices it, she shakes her head, looking all confused. Why is it so hard? She's torn between whether to get married or not. Now, she must be careful knowing what happened in her past lives. Why is it so hard and confusing? All she wants is to live and be happy with someone. The next morning, Julian notices that Leah looks tired. She couldn't sleep last night thinking about what happened. As they are sitting outside while drinking a coffee, Julian asks Leah for her answer to the proposal. Well, what Leah can say is that he has to wait for a long time. But despite that, Julian looks at her with a gentle expression on his face. saying that he'll endure it if she lets him stay by her side. Ah, Julian is the epitome of green flags for sure. Suddenly, their topic shifts to Julian's interest. It turns out that he's very much interested in painting, which caught Leah's attention. Without wasting any time, she asks Julian to paint a portrait of her. Well, Julian thinks that she'll ask him to paint her the next day, but she wants him to do it later that afternoon. At the hill, under the bright sun, Leah is wearing her pretty dress as she poses beautifully in front of Julian. She's very much amazed as to how Julian learned how to paint at a young age, because when she was young, she just kept running, holding a paintbrush and getting the paint all over her dress. While Julian is painting her, they keep on making eye contact, causing her to feel a bit shy. Suddenly, Julian laughs and tells her that he doesn't know what to color her face and she's turning red. Leah is embarrassed. Her face turns red even more as she keeps on making excuses, telling Julian that it's because of the heat. Julian asks her to rest, but when Leah is about to walk, she accidentally steps on the bottom of her dress. Julian hurriedly runs towards her, causing the two of them to fall on the floor. Their eyes meet as they realize that they're so close to each other. Just get married! It's pretty obvious that you like each other. Blood rushes on Leah's face as she realizes what just happened. She's clearly on top of him as they're lying on the grass. She can't help but to avoid his gaze out of embarrassment as she repeatedly apologizes. As she's about to stand up, she groans out of pain in her ankles. Worried about what's happening, Julian carries her in bridal style. She tries to protest, saying that she's all right, but it's not all right for him. On their way home, Leah can't help but look at him and adore how the gentleman looks. He's close to perfect with those pretty eyes, dark hair, good-looking body, tall height, and kind personality. Who won't adore someone like that, right? After the doctor checks her feet, Leah is relieved that it's nothing serious. However, when she looks at Julian, an unpleasant emotion is written all over his face. He doesn't seem relieved about it, which kind of makes her worry. But it's all just because he's scared that Leah's badly hurt. He was too worried. Hearing all of that from him warms Leah's heart. She's too thankful that he cares so much for her. How cute. Oh, Julian, how can you be so perfect? While sitting on the sofa, Leah remembers the portrait of her that Julian drew. It seems like he won't be finishing it now. What a pity. Leah wants to see it and to know if he really draws well, and if he doesn't, she'll laugh at him. Julian chuckles, asking her if that's the only reason she wants him to draw her. But of course it's not. He's polite, handsome, and considerate, and she only wants to know the other adorable side that he has, including his hobbies and talents, to also satisfy her curiosity. When they are about to go to the main hall, all of a sudden, Julian hands his hand to Leah, asking if it's okay to escort her. That's the first time that she's been escorted, even if it's not a prom, and that feels lovely. While they're walking, she can't help but to look at Julian, who immediately catches her glimpse. Julian asks her if she feels uncomfortable, so she replies that she doesn't. In the main hall, while having some beverages, Julian can't help but notice how quickly Leah drinks. Is she that thirsty? Wanting to satisfy her thirst, he offers his drink, to which she immediately declines. However, in Leah's mind, thoughts about Julian keep on running around. She has been so nervous that since the other day, her heart keeps pounding in her every little interaction with Julian. Is that love? She's not sure, but one thing she's sure of is he's making her feel something, and she keeps thinking about him. Leah's sending Julian off to go home when he suddenly asks if he can see her the next day. When she starts overthinking things, asking him if he forgot that he asks her hand and why is he not doing things like rushing her, giving her gifts, and enticing her like other men do, it seems like he treats her like a friend. But for Julian, spending a day with her is a moment that won't come back twice. He wants to treasure it more. Today, he's overflowing with happiness, and that's because of her. Suddenly, Julian kneels in front of her and pulls a ring, and at that very precious moment, he officially asks her to be his bride. And she says yes, but with a condition. He will have to sleep with her. Girl, what? As usual, Leah doesn't really fail to surprise Julian. She surprised him from the very start until now. He tries to talk her out of her decision, in which she clearly didn't think at first. She's pretty unsure of everything, but for her right now, the only thing she is sure of is that she wants to sleep with him. Right now, Leah is talking like how flirts talk. What if Julian only wants to sleep with her and won't marry her? But Leah is persistent. She slowly holds his arms, which slightly shocks him as she stares him in the eyes, asking him to kiss her. Julian wraps his arms around her waist as he slowly kisses her forehead, down to her cheeks, and finally to her lips. And just with that, Leah holds his hands and pulls him inside her house. they enjoyed a steamy night together. OMG. The next day, they are hugging each other when suddenly Leah stands up to get ready, but Julian asks for more cuddles. She can't help but give him some because how can you ever say no to a cute puppy face that he's doing? In the middle of their cuddles, Julian says how he loves her. She replies that she feels like she fell in love with him. Well, she says that because she's shy. After all that happened, Leah can't help but think of all the things that she has to do, like telling her dad and kicking out the other suitors. But then Julian sits in front of her fully dressed and asks her to clear all the things in her head and to take a rest. After all that, Julian says his goodbyes for the meantime, since the nannies will be entering her room very soon. Just as he exits, Leah can't help but burst out of happiness. It feels like a dream. She can't believe it really happened. 19th Duke of Reynal clan, who contributed to building the nation, Julian Reynal. He is famous for his kung fu. He was 15 years old at the time. His father, Duke Reynal, passed away in World War I. He attended the fight and was also the person who inherited the command authority. Duke Reynal had fought very actively, and after 5 years, the war ended with victory. Back to the present, Leah wakes up and people are coming to her room to talk about the marriage. Her sister, mother, father, and even the servants barge into her room to talk about it. They can't believe it. They were once hopeless since Leah was pretty firm about her decision to not get married. But here she is, about to get married to the handsome Julian Reynal. After facing everyone, the news about their marriage spreads around Riveron. Antoinette and Rosamund were sent away because they lost their capacity to ask for her hand. After recognizing their wedding, it is said that the knights will depart to the nation and soon receive the Queen's agreement. Moreover, all the costs for the wedding will be paid by the Reynal family. Sitting in front of the mirror while her nanny's doing her hair, Leah can't help but overhear her sister talking about her. They can't help but tease her about her marriage, but her nanny asks them to stop, looks at her, and asks her to go see Julian. Her nanny even says they told her that they would go on a date, which instantly made her blush. As she's walking, she bumps into Julian in the garden. She thought that he's in the living room, but it turns out that he's walking around for some sightseeing. Suddenly, Julian notices that their outfits match. It's probably because Julian told the nanny that they'll be dating. That's why the nanny picked that dress, but dating? Julian can't recall telling the nanny that. He only tells her that they have an appointment. She must have misheard it. Instantly, Leah knows that her nanny did it on purpose, which slightly pisses her off. But come to think of it, he also wants to date her, so what the nanny did is just right. Suddenly, he wraps his hands around her waist and asks her for a date. Leah agrees, and she stands up properly, initiating to hold his hands. Julian laughs. It seems to be the opposite. He should be the one asking for her hands. But then again, it's Leah. She will always surprise him. As they are walking, Leah finds out Julian told Nanny everything and that he told everyone just to help her because he knows that she still has a lot of things to do. Suddenly, Leah asks him a question. How did he fall in love with her? And just with that, it feels as if everything stops and she's the only thing he can see. When Julian is about to respond, their moment is interrupted by Leah's sister. She gets worried when her sisters whisk Julian away and ask him if he's fine. He can only reply with a bright smile, too busy being dragged away by energetic children. When Julian, together with her sisters, leave, she thinks that it might be fate that they can't be together for a moment. While she is planning to leave to take a rest, Bella drags her to have some tea. While sipping tea, the two of them talk about the wedding that Bella had with Jamie and how he proposed to her. Turns out, Jamie is quite shy, and it took 3 months before he actually proposed. Fortunately, he is able to speak his heart out eventually. Bella then mentions that she is happy for her sister. Leah finds this strange, and it makes her wonder. After all, when she was marrying Antoinette in the past, Bella seemed worried. They also talk about Antoinette and Rosamund as Leah's suitors, to which she feels that both are not sincere towards her. Bella also claims that Leah is lucky that Julian proposed to her quickly. She even speculates that he may have fallen for her at first sight. However, in Leah's perspective, if it was love at first sight, Julian wouldn't go around to Bella's wedding all by himself. Bella then comments that the island is beautiful and is, in fact, visited by people only to see how beautiful it is. They go to their home, even though they never planned to propose to someone in the first place. As Leah hears about this, the thought of Julian strikes her mind, for he is someone who just wanted to take a moment on the island. I guess not, because clearly he fell in love with you, Leah. Bella exclaims that marriage must be considered before accepting, a sentiment that Leah definitely agrees with. They also compare the two suitors to Julian, for they can hardly stand on the same ground as the Duke when it comes to looks and wealth. The Duke is also related to the Queen of the Empire, since the previous Duke Reynald's wife is the sister of the Queen. Bella also assures Leah to be calm, since she thinks that the Queen deliberately chooses people who can support him. When Leah tells Bella that she wants to see Julian, Bella immediately teases her and talks about whether they will plan their schedules for their wedding. Leah's cheeks are red as tomatoes when her sister makes fun of her. I'm really looking forward to their wedding. I, for one, want to marry my very own Julian, too. Meanwhile, Leah recalls both of her two failed marriages and how worried her sister was back then, reminding her to think more about the marriage. As she holds back her confession about her third life, she is left to think of her past while looking at Bella. She wonders why her sister doesn't warn her anymore just like before. Going back to her senses, Leah asks Bella if she knows Julian, since he claims that he saw Leah at her sister's wedding. However, Bella answers that it was the first time she met him. Bella suddenly stands up and asks Leah if Julian fell in love with her at the wedding, speculating that he came all the way to the island just to propose to Leah. If this is true, Julian is the most remarkable man I know. Leah keeps quiet about the matter, but this does not deter Bella from exclaiming that her face is the look of someone who has fallen in love. Despite announcing that she would not get married, she was still captured by Julian's charm. Feeling the need for some rest, she asks Bella's permission to leave. As she walks the stairs, she can't help but think about her decision to marry Julian because things are moving quickly and she hasn't had much time to think about it. When she opens the door to the garden, a surprise awaits for her. Julian is standing there in all his dashing glory. He turns to her and gives her the most swoon-worthy smile to ever exist. He then suggests that they should hold their wedding there. I think I'm going to have a heart attack because of these two. If one ventures down the basement near Leah's room, they will discover a door there. Beyond it is the most beautiful flower garden, and from then on, only Leah knows about it. The only person she has ever told about that place is Bella. Since then, they kept the garden's location a secret. At present, Leah is surprised by how Julian got to the garden, even though she and Bella are the only ones who knew about this place. Completely ignoring what Julian just said, she asks him how he discovered their secret garden. She then realizes that it was her sister who revealed it to him. She welcomes Julian to the beautiful garden. He then continues to claim that it is suitable for weddings. However, she responds that the wedding is normally held in the Southern Territory. Nonetheless, he claims that they could always hold their wedding at Reynald's territory. However, he knows that she wants to get married in a lavender field. I love how he knows even the tiniest details about her. Can I get a man like Julian, please? Julian also mentioned that in her first life, she wasn't able to get married at the venue she wished for. Hearing this from him surprises Leah because she doesn't recall mentioning this to him. However, looking back, it was true that her first wedding with Antone was held in the territory. It was attended by their family, and she described it as a poor wedding. Because of Antone's pride, her first wedding is awful, to say the least. Julian then asks about her second wedding with Rosamund. Leah shares the experience with him. She tells him that there were too many gems and too many people during that time. When she told Rosamund that she wanted to get married in a lavender field, the man went on to decorate the venue with lavender-colored gemstones. Really, there is such a thing as too much. She was not happy at all. She felt that she was there at her wedding to represent his bride, and after that, she was imprisoned like jewelry. She even concludes that both weddings are worse since they ended up in awful marriages. I could really tell that it was worse, no doubt about that. Leah also shares how she hated her father, Duke Riveron, for how he easily handed over her to someone else. She also adds that she hated her father getting involved in politics. She even ended up getting nagged by her mother not to go against her father's actions. Leah confesses that she doesn't want her marriage with Julian to end like her first two marriages. She also adds that she will trust him and marry him as she feels that it is good to be by his side. Most importantly, she tells him that she's starting to love him. Aww, I really hope that you'll be lucky in this marriage, Leah. After a moment, she tells him that they should plan their wedding together and that she will no longer entrust her future to luck. However, she demands that he must have a guaranteed future with her. Julian asks about her conditions, so without hesitation, she begins to talk about the things she never had in her past life. She wants to be able to visit Riveron anytime she wants. He's also not allowed to limit her actions nor make her suffer. Lastly, if ever he ended up loving someone else, he must tell her and let her go. He is also not allowed to take her places she doesn't want to go, and he must allow her to live freely. If they break up, he must prepare a place for her to live and still treat her like a duchess. Basically, she's asking for all the things she was not allowed to have in her past marriages. Once she is done, the Duke hugs her from behind and assures her that he'll do everything she wants. However, he asks that she take him with her whenever she wants to visit Riveron. When she mentions that he may have something important to attend to by then, he replies that there's nothing more important than her. Oh, he is the greenest flag there is. She couldn't help but be curious about why Julian fell in love with her, knowing that he only got to love her in this life. However, he declares that he had always loved her. Turns out, he was just shy this whole time. The following day, Bella is shocked when Leah tells her about how they are planning to have their wedding next week. Leah wants to keep it simple and only invite her nanny and sisters. After a while, Leah and Julian were discussing their wedding preparations. When they talk about the dress she would wear, he suggests the blue dress that she had worn before. When she asks why he seems to like it so much, he simply answers that he likes her even more when she wears that dress. Leah also tells him about her plans for their wedding, which she writes to her diary before. She also informs him that they should write a vow to read at the wedding, to which he responds positively. On the day of the wedding, Leah's nanny is in charge of achieving her wedding look. It's simple, yet elegant. Her sisters then come into her room to congratulate her on the wedding. As Leah, her sisters, and her nanny walk through the stairs, Leah can't help but ponder what Julian has prepared. As she opens the door of the garden, she is welcomed by a beautiful wedding place she had asked for. Whoa! Julian's ability to make her request a reality is truly impressive. She is taken aback by how thoughtful Julian is. He's able to manage to do all the things that she's imagined before. She couldn't understand how he put it all together in such a short span of time. Even the music played was her favorite since she was a child. You're getting what you deserve, Leah. When Julian arrives, he greets her with grace and kisses her hand. He compliments her, saying how stunning she looks. He then gives her a royal gem that suits her well, placing it on her hair. The most beautiful bride, period. When everything is said, he holds her hand as they walk through the aisle together. While walking, he mentions that he's eagerly awaiting the moment they get married for what feels like ages. Despite the endless pain and waiting, he never regretted the choice of loving her. He declares that even in another life, he will still choose her, and only her in every lifetime. Y'all, get a man like Julian. He is so romantic. I'm so jealous. In turn, Leah now knows that she would choose him all over again, as she is now sure about what she truly feels towards him. Kalian, who is brought by Julian, speaks the words of blessings, stating that Julian and Leah have become one, for they are connected by true love, and that they will remain together through hardships and will find happiness with each other. After exchanging their vows, their wedding is sealed with a kiss. As time goes by, their marriage is approved by the Queen, and they eventually travel back to Reynald's territory. Upon arriving, Leah notices the peach trees along the way and asks Julian if it is for her. She also asks if she can eat some peaches. However, he answers that she can no longer eat them, so they have to wait for the next harvest season. When they enter the manor, they are greeted by their maids and butler. Julian strokes Leah's hair and mentions that Leah has been busy looking around since they arrived at the territory. He also exclaims that she should give him such attention too. Leah playfully asks him if he is jealous at that moment. The man then shamelessly admits that he is. She finds it hard to believe since he might have dated a lot of women before her. However, he assures her that he is genuine about his feelings towards her. He really looks so cute when he's jealous. Leah has been living in Reynald's estate for 3 months now, and despite her initial worries, she has been enjoying herself, especially with Julian treating her so kindly. But for now, he is out visiting those on the outskirts. Without him, she can't help but feel a little lonely. How cute. She misses her hubby already. Fortunately, Beth and Bella, her sisters, come to see her, and they are all overjoyed to see each other once again. Beth, however, can't wait to see the library that Leah has been writing letters to her about. When they arrive, Leah's sister is astounded to discover the library. It has an extensive collection of books. They keep going around to the other rooms, the one with all the crafts and jewels included. The dressing room and garden they visit afterward made Leah think of her own secret garden in Riveron. There's also a proud display of the rooms bearing the names of Riveron's family members. When asked about their sleeping situation, Leah reveals that she doesn't have a room as she prefers to sleep with Julian. During the tour, Beth notices the room with a locked door. She can't resist but to ask Leah about what was inside. Leah explains to Beth that based on what Julian had told her, it is his storage room. Beth's curiosity grows and playfully jokes about the possibility of Julian having secrets hidden in there. Bella intervened, trying to stop Beth from going too far. Even though Beth has convinced them that she was just joking, Leah can't stop thinking about the room throughout the entire week until the day Beth and Bella leave. Despite Julian being nice towards her, there are moments when Leah feels like he might be hiding something. However, she tries to convince herself that there is probably nothing important in that locked room. After a while, she decides to take a peek at the room since Julian just leaves the key at his office. This also leads her to believe that he has nothing to hide. As she opens the door, she is surprised at how clean it is, and most importantly, it is empty except for a blackboard. She then notices that the board is filled with writing detailing various causes of death and murder plans. Shocked by these revelations, Leah's eyes fell on her own portrait that is displayed there. She feels uneasy about what it all means and tries to process everything that she has discovered. Suddenly, someone grabs her shoulder from behind. When she turns around, she sees that it's Julian. She sees his cold expression as he tells her that she isn't supposed to enter the room. She started to wonder if the man that she loved might actually be a murderer. "You better explain yourself, Julian." Julian recalls his meeting with the Queen prior to everything. It was pretty clear that he wasn't thrilled about it. Her Majesty wanted him to get married, and she revealed a portrait of his potential wife, Isabella Riveron. However, Julian didn't seem impressed, even if he found Isabella's beauty fascinating. He also came up with an excuse that he would join the army. He then asked Her Majesty for a 3-year break and would eventually follow the Majesty's will. He added that he'd come back and do whatever she wanted after that. What? He was supposed to get married to Isabella? After meeting Her Majesty, he was annoyed that she kept on persuading him to get married. He believed that people should know there's nothing good about marriage, considering his own family's experience. After what he experienced with his parents' relationship, he never considered getting married. What he wanted in his life was to prioritize his work and not be bothered by marriage. He thought that it was way better to stay single and think of an excuse for the next 3 years. As the years passed by, Julian was summoned by the Queen once again. He was practically ordered to take a 3-month vacation to Riveron. He was totally caught off guard after hearing about it. On top of that, she expected him to come back with news of his upcoming wedding. The Queen is quite pushy, I tell you that. After meeting Her Majesty, he was basically forced into a carriage with other suitors, and he had to keep his cool. He reminded himself that just because he was going to Riveron didn't mean he was going to get married. As Julian sat inside the carriage, he couldn't help but eavesdrop on Antoinette and Rosamund's conversation. It was clear that Her Majesty chose them on purpose. Between those guys, I would rather pick Julian, no doubt about it. Since 3 months had passed, Isabella was married to Jamie, so these suitors were probably competing for the hand of the 4th Riveron's daughter. When Julian arrived at Riveron Island, he was venting to Edmund, a friend of his, about how he was dragged to a place that he didn't want to be and had to attend a ball right after arriving. Edmund asked Julian if he had seen Leah yet. Julian replies that Leah looked too thin and probably starved herself for days just to fit into a pretty dress. Wow, you're being super judgy, Julian. However, he admitted that Leah was charming and beautiful, but she just wasn't his type. We will see about that. Out of curiosity, Edmund asked Julian what his type was, to which he replied that he liked a woman who was profit and loss just like him, beautiful but kind, and smart but a little bit stupid. After hearing it, Edmund said that Leah seemed to fit the description of his type. However, Julian shut it down, thinking that she was probably too assertive for his type. He also added that he doesn't want to get involved with Duke Riveron, who was practically selling off his 7 daughters. To his surprise, Leah, with a furious expression on her face, appeared behind him out of the blue. He was totally caught off guard, but then in a swift moment, her expression switched. She greeted Julian, and that's how their first meeting went. Just when he came across Leah in the hallway, his expression suddenly turned a bit troubled. Leah teasingly asked if love is truly that crucial, to which he confusedly replied. His thoughts about love were becoming more solid, and if that was the thing they called love, then he didn't want to fall in love anymore. Leah noticed that in just less than a week, Julian knew how to make such an expression. Definitely way opposite than his cold and blank face. It was because 4 days ago, the day after the ball, Julian attended the tea time with Leah, but even if the weather's fine, the room was filled with deafening silence and cold atmosphere. This favored Julian since there was no need to talk about unnecessary things like marriage. Looking at him, Leah was a bit more annoyed, but when her sister Bella came in the room, her expression suddenly turned bright. Bella then asked Julian about the lavender garden to which they considered Riveron's pride. Julian replied coldly, so Bella asked if it was his first time visiting the island. However, Julian gave her a not-so-good answer, further emphasizing that unless there was no invitation, no one could visit the island, so it was obvious that it was his first time. Bella still responded nicely, but Leah just couldn't sit and watch how he rudely answered her sister. Bella, on the other hand, didn't seem bothered and was in fact enjoying her sister staring at him for how long. And so Bella left to give them space and time together. Well, Leah couldn't deny that he is indeed handsome, but Bella interpreted it a wrong way. Julian already expected that Bella was mistaken about his relationship with Leah when there was none to begin with, and he felt restless, struggling on the edge of their expectations. When Leah turned to face him, her face showed that she wasn't happy for what he did. Still, he found it quite a bit interesting. Suddenly, Leah grabbed the cup and drank it, not minding the proper etiquette and what he might think of her. A moment of silence before she finally spoke up, saying that she'd forgive him for speaking rudely about her yesterday. But it seemed like Julian didn't even recall what he did. This revelation surprised her, but she still forgave him for carelessly making such awful remarks. And there, Julian thought that he'd stare at her for 3 months, further digging if she has a good personality, or if she just couldn't bear being awkward in a room with him. I don't know what's gotten into him, but he just let out a bright and beaming smile, the not-so-typical thing about Julian, but it actually suits him better. Just then, Julian expresses that she doesn't have to forgive him since he didn't say anything rude enough to be forgiven. He also dug up about her father, who had been trading his daughters. Although he didn't intend to let her hear it, there was a chance that if she hated him, then there was no need to care about the marriage. He then further criticized that bragging about the island's scenery wouldn't cover up his father's business by putting his daughters on trading marriages. Leah argued that he still participated in those marriages, so he didn't have the right to criticize her father since they were just the same. However, Julian didn't mind being criticized, but he insisted that he also had the right to judge since he was involved in his business. Leah demanded an apology for talking ill about her father in front of her. Out of annoyance, Julian coldly apologized, but Leah was quick to point out that it wasn't sincere at all. She then brought up when he arbitrarily judged her appearance for being too skinny and what her eyes looked like. Little did she know, Julian thought otherwise. Her eyes weren't that bad and he found it pretty. Still, he spoke rudely again, pointing at how she probably didn't eat well to wear a dress that was too tight at the waist. This time, Leah couldn't hold back her anger. She yelled at him, saying that she ate well and that she could boil him at this instant and devour him. Also, she naturally had a slim body, so she wouldn't gain weight no matter how much she ate. In short, she's just naturally sexy. Leah lectured him not to make such judgments because someone might insult him back. Still, her judgment about his dark eyes didn't affect him. Leah's on a fury rage, noting that they would never, ever get married. Julian crossed his arms and smirked. He'd be grateful if she turned him down as early as possible, because there was no way he'd fall in love with a girl like her. Says a man who suddenly proposed to her. In the library, his best friend Edmund scolded him for what he did to Leah. Still, he thought it would be better if she'd hate him because his plan on not getting married wouldn't change. At this point, Edmund frankly told him how much he disappointed him as a best friend. Edmund explained that even if he achieved his purpose by doing that, he didn't think of what Leah would go through in the hands of the other suitors. After all, Leah would be the most pitiful one if she chose one of them to get married to, leaving her no choice but to get along with the proposal process. That's right! Smack him on the head if you need to, Edmund! Julian realized that he's being too selfish for hurting Leah's heart for his own sake and admitted that it was completely his fault. The next day, Leah greeted him formally, but as he was about to apologize, Antone got in the way and led her in the opposite direction. He was badly ignored. But seeing her from a distance made him realize one thing. Leah knew how to laugh with others, and so he decided to apologize as soon as possible. Hours later, when Leah's father left, she caught Julian staring at her and asked if he was going to insult her again. Julian disagreed and immediately apologized for what he said. His expression changed too, more gentle and sincere. Julian admitted that he had no intention of getting married and he badly wanted to get out of this setup, so he thought it'd be alright if he made her hate him. He realized that it was not good to hurt her just for his own selfish reasons. And so he apologized for all of it. Leah was kind of shocked for a moment, but she smiled and accepted his apology, saying that there was no reason not to forgive him after he admitted all his faults. Julian was quite happy that there was no bad blood between them anymore. Leah, on the other hand, assured him that she didn't take it to heart and that he shouldn't worry about the marriage because she wouldn't choose him as her husband. Julian realized that even if he behaved rudely, Leah responded without crossing the line once, and she even forgave him after that. She was undeniably a good girl. if it keep going like this, who knows what he might fall into? Out of impulse, he suddenly called out her name as she was walking away. Leah turned around, not recalling anything about allowing him to call her first name. Julian apologized, but he seemed puzzled about that feeling when he impulsively called her name. But what surprised her the most is when Julian asked if they could be friends with each other. I'm telling you, this is how my grandparents started. Julian was clearly determined to make friends with her, even if he was very mean to her. Even though he acted rude to her, he confessed that he was very pleased with her, leaving Leah conscious about her eyes when he leaned closer. Julian corrected his rudeness about her eyes. Truly, her eyes looked beautiful, especially when the sunlight was shining upon its blue hue. He added that it was sweet when she smiled, and it was alive when she looked at him. Leah smiled sweetly and agreed to his suggestion, but on one condition. Before she could say anything, Julian beat her to it so that she could scold him however she wanted to, seemingly suggesting that she should throw back the insult he gave to her. However, Leah just laughed. She didn't know that he was a very interesting person. She then cleared her throat and said that his face had nothing for her to speak against. I agree. I mean, look at him. He is so undeniably handsome. Julian asked about her condition, to which she responded that he should just talk with her in a friendly manner and that he could call her Leah. When Julian confirmed their friendship, Leah casually called him by his first name. It was so informal, as if they were just neighborhood dudes. Even Edmund refrained from doing so. This sparked Julian's interest in her, and so he rushed to keep up with her pace and promised to talk more politely with her. Leah smiled brightly, agreeing to his suggestion once more. That afternoon, Julian kept thinking how Leah's expression changed in just 3 days. He sat on his chair and remembered that she blurted out how she could cook and eat him. This made him realize that he should buy something for her, even though she already forgave him. But the question was, what could he possibly give to her when he didn't even know what she liked the most? Julian was lost in his own thoughts when Bella kept calling him from behind. Just then, Julian seized the opportunity to ask her about Leah's preferences. Bella, with her ever-lovely smile, suggested that it would be better if he had brought some mystery books because Leah was crazy about such novels. Without any delay, Julian rushed to his room and searched for detective novels about the war and the killer's secret. Also, he wondered why Leah's father weirdly built a library next to the mansion. Still, he decided to go there and read the book, so if he could find any interesting ones, then he would lend it to Leah. Is this one of the things we do for friendship? And by then, these books would symbolize the start of their friendship. The next day, Julian decided to come in first at their tea time because he noticed Leah's punctuality every time. Also, he was curious if she received the books he sent to her. However, when he came into the room, he spotted Leah sitting on the couch with a tired expression. It turned out that she couldn't sleep well because of the books someone brought to her. Julian asked if she finished reading those books, but Leah just finished the first one and was still continuing the next. Julian was about to spoil some contents, but Leah covered her ears and yelled at him for being such a spoiler. We feel you. We also do have friends like that, Leah. They always spoil the mood. However, during their walk, Leah couldn't help but to ask about the culprit in the book. But this time, Julian kept smiling without saying anything despite being asked. Leah decided to finish the book later on and proceeded to talk about another book called The Story of the Princess of the Aslan Empire. Throughout the day, Leah did most of the talking, more like storytelling. So for the next, Leah offered to lend it to him as they giggled on how their friendship bloomed by just talking and listening to each other. Just then, Julian asked if she could write a test book. Leah fidgeted her fingers first before answering. Before, she actually edited a piece, but girls couldn't publish books. Julian argued that the queen was also a woman, so he wondered whoever told her not to publish anything. Leah recalled how she wanted to write and publish books since she was a young child, but her father shattered her dreams and told her that girls couldn't publish books. I feel bad for her. Parents are supposed to support their child's dream, especially if it's something they really want to do. Also, even though she'd break the chains bound to her father's expectations, soon after getting married, she thought that no husband would approve of his wife writing and publishing a book. Julian disagreed because if it'd be a dark one, then he'd absolutely support his wife. Leah reminded him that not everyone had the same opinions and thoughts about him. And so Julian suggested that she could publish a novel under his name without taking any of the profit. Leah pointed out the possibility that his wife would probably object to it, but Julian was firm in his decision not to get married, or if he would, then she should write quickly before that. Leah laughed about it, but his eyes fixated on her chubby cheeks. Then suddenly, he proposed that if things wouldn't work that way, they should just marry each other so there'd be no objections from their future partners. Leah asked if he was proposing to her, and he somehow responded to it. For a moment, there was silence, but after that, both of them laughed at what just happened. I admit, we often joke about things like that with our best friends. Leah told her to stop thinking about the possibility of getting married since he didn't even love her. Julian didn't know why people whine about love like that, saying that it wasn't even a big deal. Leah scolded him again. It may be nothing to him, but for some people, it was the most important thing. Julian told her that she talked like someone used to love, but Leah was just so immersed in romance novels too. And so she decided to lend her romance novel so he wouldn't propose impulsively like that. Leah called her a kid, but Julian looked at her intensely, taking into account the possibility of him proposing to her. Leah yelled at him to go away, but he followed her and asked if she'd really lend him a romance novel. Even though he couldn't empathize and understand romance, he still gave it a shot. After 3 days, he came across Leah in the hallway and told her that if that was the thing they called love, then he didn't want to fall in love anymore. His eyes still wet from crying over a book. The next day, Leah's nanny kept calling her attention, but she seemed lost in her own thoughts. When she finally noticed her nanny, who asked if she was blushing because of her suitors, Leah was amazed how her nanny could tell just by looking at her face. Leah admitted that the first day of her magical summer wasn't that great, but at the moment, she had so much fun. Her nanny asked if she was referring to the evening ball, but strangely, Leah couldn't seem to recall what happened back then. Meanwhile, Edmund had a hard time catching Julian's attention. Wow, even in spacing out, they are now in sync. Maybe it's something we get from hanging out with our friends a lot. Julian had never been serious, but as what Edmund saw, he was really in deep thought about something. When Edmund left, Julian wondered what Leah was doing at the moment because he expected they would stop by first and read a book together. He then got up and entrusted his belongings to Alfredo as he strolled through the crowded town. He remembered that it had been a week since the day he bawled his eyes out while reading the romance novel. Also within that week, all they did was talk about novels while taking a walk in the greenhouse and even while eating. Though she was reprimanded for her etiquette, Julian didn't mind at all. In fact, he didn't want her to stop talking. Anyone who saw them might think they were old friends, although their first meeting was the worst. Still, Leah forgot everything and treated him nicely, making him realize that she was way smarter and wiser than anyone when expressing her opinion, though sometimes she talked nonsense. Also, he couldn't find the culprit in the book, and surprisingly, he forgot it and fell on the edge of her skirt. Somehow, it felt really special. Just then, something caught his attention. He stopped and looked at the elegant blue dress in a shop. That afternoon, Edmund asked whom he'd give it to. When he responded that he'd give it to Leah, Edmund let out a teasing face. He argued that he just thought that the dress suited her. Now he's starting to think about her, huh? I didn't know he is quite the romantic type before his character development. Edmund changed the topic and told him that it was about to rain. But all Julian could ever think about was how excitedly he wanted to go and see her wearing the dress. By the time they arrived at the mansion, he proceeded to go to the reception room, thinking that Leah might be there with Antoine. But when he got there, Leah wasn't around. Instead, he was greeted by Antoine, who bragged that he was just walking nearby with Leah a few minutes ago. But Leah fell down and went to change her clothes. That's why he was in the waiting room. Julian asked if she got hurt, but Antoine answered that he was just fine. Geez, what a narcissist! Such an unreasonable high sense of his own importance. Dude, no one cares about you. However, Julian felt so twisted at the thought of Leah spending her time with another guy. This is when Antoine showed his true colors, calling Leah a bitch who'd applaud at something so simple like poems. Also, he mocked Leah's eyes and called it rat-colored who pretended to be expensive. Just then, Antoine crossed the line and disrespected Leah too much. Julian wasn't able to control himself as he punched Antoine on the face. He reached for Antoine's collar, but Leah barged in the door and stopped him. Without hearing his explanation, she suddenly slapped him on the face and told him to stop hurting people. Oh no! Poor Julian, he isn't doing anything wrong. And the dress! How can he give it to her now? He was looking forward to seeing her wearing it. Also, since she saw him leaving the mansion earlier, she asked if wouldn't it be better if he'd go home since she wouldn't marry him anyway. Julian apologized for hurting her, but Leah wanted him to apologize to Antoine too. He didn't, but he was so hurt by her words that he considered going back to his territory soon, as she told him to. Just then, Antoine suddenly screamed like he'd seen a ghost. It turned out that Jane and Lydia, Leah's younger sisters, had been in the room all along and heard everything. So they told her what happened, but the twins suspected that maybe it was because of his honor as the Duke that he couldn't tolerate bad people. Or could it be that he secretly liked their sister Leah? Despite the pouring rain, Julian walked straight, thinking that he hurt her again and that he ruined their friendship. No, whether it's because of your honor or if you secretly like her, what you did was just right. Just then, Leah ran towards him, repeatedly calling his name as she stumbled down on the muddy pathway. Julian rushed to her and held her hands as he cupped her face. Leah apologized for hitting him, but he didn't mind. Just then, he leaned his forehead to hers and told her that she was his very special friend. Leah's hopes that he secretly likes her went down. For him, she was just a friend. Still, she told him not to go back to his territory. Julian just smiled, a hint of agreement. That night, one of Leah's servants found a paper bag containing a blue dress. When Leah opened it, she found Julian's letter along with the pretty dress. She decided to wear it by morning to show it to him, but it rained and she had to stay inside her room. But fate didn't just sit by. 2 days later, they met at the prom. So guys, what do you think of this story so far? Please subscribe and turn on notifications for updates on this and all our other stories, so you can be the first to find out when they're out. Thank you so much for your support. See you in the next one! The day of the prom finally arrives. Edmund greets Julian upon seeing him, arriving earlier than expected. The prom is slowly starting, and he seems like he's looking for someone. These boys catch up with each other for a bit as the event begins. Shortly after, Leah finally arrives in her dazzling blue dress. When Edmund compliments her, Julian shows a hint of jealousy after seeing her show an angelic smile in front of other men. Besides that, she also finds out shortly after that the dress she's wearing is from him. Stop it, Julian! You're making my heart flutter. As expected, the dress looks good on her and it fits her perfectly. Leah can't help but notice that he's being so nice to her all of a sudden. She assumes that he's probably sorry because he beat Antony before. However, Julian denies this. He simply wants to give her a gift. There is no special reason behind it, as he confesses that he likes her. Moreover, a friend of his says that when women are upset, it would be good to buy them something beautiful. Leah then asks about how men apologize out of the blue. Although she hates what men say about women, she thinks it would be good to know about it. Julian explains that men often apologize with a small smile and a kiss, inspired by how couples are portrayed in novels. With this response, she kisses him as an apology for hitting him before. He gets taken aback, surprised by her random gesture. Now his face is burning red as he kisses her back again. OMG, the look on his face is so precious. Momentarily, Leah's sisters arrive and almost catch them. Her little sister innocently asks if it's hot after she notices that she's sweating. Fortunately, they were not too suspicious of them. Phew, I thought they were going to get caught. The next morning, everyone is tired from the prom, so Leah has breakfast alone. However, even at lunch and afternoon tea, Julian's presence is nowhere to be seen. Now, she is convinced that he must hate her. Leah's mind is overwhelmed with thoughts, causing her to wonder if she might have become too close to him too soon, or if she was perhaps impolite. Even though she usually avoids the garden during tea time, she's here now because of Julian. Admittedly, she has feelings for him, and it seems that he feels the same way about her as well. They shared a kiss the other night, but she hasn't seen him at all today. She is on the brink of frustration when she spots Julian's servant. Inquiring about his whereabouts, she learns that he has come down with a cold and is resting in his room. Moreover, the Duke has been out in the rain for 2 days straight, which might be the reason he's fallen sick. Upon hearing this, Leah hurriedly rushes to Julian, consumed with concern. As soon as she arrives in his room, he quickly gets up, startled and confused. He then insists that he's not seriously ill, just dealing with a minor cold. However, that doesn't make a difference because she is still deeply concerned about him. In a moment, he spots a wound on her face that she hasn't even noticed. As she reflects on it, she realizes that a branch might have scratched her face while she was on her way to his room. With that, he instructs her to sit on his bed for a moment. Feeling a bit embarrassed, he reassures her, reminding her that she has barged into his room aggressively and that there's no reason for her to feel self-conscious. Soon after, Julian gently cleans the scratch on her face and places a tender kiss on it. This is his way of apologizing since he couldn't express his regret the other day. Leah, now blushing deeply, tells him to lie down and get some rest. Not wanting to disturb him while he's resting, she insists on leaving, suggesting they can meet up once he's feeling better. However, he doesn't want her to go, afraid she might get hurt again. Even though he's sick, he wants to escort her later. He remains stubborn, so Leah reassures him that she will stay. Julian's condition reminds her of a past experience. She remembers lying in bed, overwhelmed by pain, when she suddenly heard a noise. It was her father coming in to check on her and sit by her side. Since it was unusual for her father to visit, she pretended to be asleep, though she wasn't sure if he realized she was faking. He gently stroked her forehead until she drifted off, just as she is now comforting Julian. When she woke up, her father was gone. From then on, whenever she fell ill, she always hoped he would return to comfort her in the same way. Unfortunately, it didn't happen again. By that time, she wasn't surprised anymore, knowing that her father was not the affectionate type. He didn't show much care for her sisters either. Rather, her father is the kind of person who shouts at his wife and wants others to obey and notice his mood. I'm glad she turned out completely different from her father. In addition, he has never praised Leah even once. But thinking about his hand touching her forehead, she can't completely hate him. Now that she is older, she finds herself ridiculous. On the other hand, Julian reveals that his father is just like hers, but even worse. One time, his parents were visiting the Imperial Morisham, and he stayed in the mansion of a count. However, his parents still had an argument to the point where his father got very angry, so he left his mother and went away. His mother was angry as well, so she came back to Renal immediately, leaving him alone. Both of his parents didn't bother caring about him, even when he was just a child. Only the servant came to find him, so his parents didn't realize that they had left their child for a week. What? They don't deserve to be parents! Contrary to Leah, her father had shown her warmth, even if only for a night, which made Julian feel quite envious. He struggles to understand her perspective, finding it hard to forgive someone for all their past mistakes based on just one positive memory. Her heart is full of compassion and forgiveness, while he remains uncertain whether he can ever forgive his father. He thinks that Duke Riveron is lucky to have a very kind and beautiful daughter, and he himself is lucky to have her. If it weren't for Julian, Leah would likely have attracted many other wonderful people. He considers himself fortunate to be among the lucky ones to get to meet her and witness her smile. Meanwhile, he is already the best for her, even if there's another person cooler than him. The next day, Julian seems a lot better compared to the other day. In the summer, the sun still hasn't set, even after dinner time. The sunset view can be seen through the window. As the yellow sky slowly shifts to a deep orange and transitions from pink to red, the stunning weather is perfect to stroll around. He then initiates holding Leah's hand while walking. Shortly, she comes up with an idea to recreate one of his memories. However, Julian can't remember anything, so she shares her memory first. Back when Leah was about 3 or 4 years old, snowflakes fell into her eyes. The white snow drifted down from the place where the stars reside, and she still recalls the moment when everything appears blurred. Strangely, it is said that 10 years after Leah was born, the snow stopped falling. But when she turned 10 years old, she saw the snow for the first time. Now she's doubting whether her memory of the snow is just an imagination or not. Anyway, she changes the topic to Julian's story about his parents. She'll remember the truth that he was a lonely child who was abandoned, but she wants him to forget that bad memory now. Instead, Leah makes up a new story to create a fresh memory for him. In this new memory, his father is portrayed as busy and grumpy, yet he often spent his evening taking walks with him and his mother, much like they're doing now. In addition to this, when Julian's mother wanted a hug, his father gave her one willingly and with affection. They now recreate this memory by embracing each other in the same way. It turns out that recreating this moment brings them a sense of comfort. Aw, that's so wholesome! Afterward, Leah advises him to share her version of his past if anyone asks about it. In her version, his father is depicted as a deeply affectionate person who frequently patted him on the back, creating a more positive memory just for him. Along with this, Julian affirms that she too is a cherished and beloved person. Soon after, he excuses himself and quickly disappears. As she waits for him to return, the sky has grown dark. When he returns, he is out of breath and takes Leah's hands in his. After kissing her hand, he musters all his courage and kneels before her. Unsure of when he might have another chance, he seizes the moment and proposes to her. Oh my gosh, I wasn't expecting this sudden proposal! Admittedly, Julian explains that he had been running a fever because he couldn't stop thinking about her all day. He confesses that even just 1 hour apart makes him anxious, and he feels he would be devastated if he couldn't see her. He tells her that he wants to see her every day and is determined to become a better man for her. He used to think that Leah would meet someone better than him, but now he doesn't want to give her to anyone anymore. Assuming that she must be saving someone as special as him, he asks once more if she will marry him. Given that it's a shame to let a handsome man like him go, her answer is a wholehearted yes. I love the logic. Don't let go of him, Leah. However, there is one thing Leah wants to do before they marry. She reveals that she would like to be intimate with him before they get married. What? Julian initially interprets intimacy as simply taking a nap together and holding hands. When Leah clarifies that she meant it in the context of a husband and wife relationship, he is surprised and feels a bit foolish. Oh wow, he's actually so innocent. I'm surprised. While it's understood that they will share everything together after marriage, such as simply having each other by their side, she feels she would also like to be in bed with him before the wedding. With that, she instructs him to come to her room later that night at midnight. Now Julian's face is flushed with embarrassment. Before they part ways, she leaves him with a final remark, looking forward to seeing him later at midnight if he has the courage to do it. OMG, this girl! Julian might just have a heart attack! Afterward, he comes back to bed from his bathroom after taking a shower, contemplating what to do. He thinks that Leah is in a hurry to rush things like these. The truth is that he's shy. That's why he panicked. Time is passing by so fast that it's almost midnight. With that, he decides to go for a walk. However, there's one thing that Julian overlooked. It is where he used to go for a walk before. Even though he is walking unconsciously at the moment, he finds himself standing in front of Leah's window. Now that he's here, he knows there's no turning back. He then slips through her bathroom window, unsure of what to expect on the other side. To his surprise, she's in the bathtub relaxing. Taken aback by Julian's unexpected early arrival, she quickly stands up entirely unclothed. They are so chaotic. Both of their faces are red, indicating that they're embarrassed. Soon after, she sinks back into the bathtub and scolds him for coming through the window when the main door was open, and it isn't even midnight yet. In her defense, she explains that her surprise made her stand up. Meanwhile, Julian approaches her, thanking her for all of her courage and expressing his deep appreciation for her. Moreover, he tells her that he loves her, which catches her off guard. It's her first time officially hearing those words from him, so she doesn't know how to respond properly. Since that day, after enjoying private time together, a grand wedding has finally been held. Now, they're officially married. Finally, they're now married! By the end of September, the maids will welcome the newlywed couple to the Renal territory. Surprisingly, the place is so tall and dark. Julian's mother used to use all her attention to decorate the mansion. However, soon after she realized it was useless, she started to abandon it. Fortunately, it's not a problem since Leah is a home decorator. True to her words, she demonstrates her skills. After 3 years of the Renal mansion sitting empty and neglected, it has been transformed into a beautiful home. The image of the mansion changes day by day, but the love they have for each other hasn't changed even after 3 years have passed. However, relationship problems can't be avoided. Julian expresses his concern for Leah in a way that she finds troubling, highlighting a huge difference in their personalities. Oh no, please tell me their issues are not that deep. Julian and Leah are two individuals who are complete opposites of each other. Perhaps they should have realized this when they first met and fought with each other, but they were so deeply in love that they didn't even notice it. They say that opposites attract, so maybe that's why they're perfect together. Every time Leah gets hurt, Julian shows his concern for her in an aggressive way. Knowing that she is hurt because she tripped, he scolds her for not being careful. This time, she's had enough of his behavior and decides to confront him. She is aware that she needs to be more cautious, but he doesn't notice her efforts, as she often ends up getting hurt regardless. Additionally, Julian consistently responds to Leah with passive-aggressive behavior whenever these situations arise, which is why they frequently end up arguing. Even Judy and Elliot, the maids and servants of the Renal estate, find their fights suffocating. Even though Julian is a great master, she feels sympathy for Leah, aware of his cold-hearted nature. Their conversation is interrupted by the ongoing voices of the couple still caught up in their argument. One thing that Leah doesn't like is being ordered around, but the way Julian talks to her is like he is her boss or something. All she asks is for him to speak a little bit nicer to her. Admittedly, she gets scared when he talks to her aggressively because he always sounds like he's angry. That's why she asks him not to express his concern in such a manner. Gosh, that's honestly such a red flag. At this point, Julian is fed up and wants to continue their discussion at a later time. This only infuriates Leah more, as she is frustrated by how he constantly stops their conversations, even though he's the one who always initiates the fights. Afterward, he orders Elliot not to allow anyone in his office. His expression is intimidating, clearly showing his anger. On the other hand, Judy is comforting Leah, who has been crying too much. After 3 years of fighting, Judy has become a master at comforting her. Although she is aware that Julian is just worried about her, all she wants is for him to speak to her nicely. It's really not nice to speak to one's wife in a commanding tone. Moreover, she has ears and she can understand, so there is really no need for him to talk in such a scary tone. The way Leah continuously cries is proof that she's really upset. However, despite that, she misses him. She might hate him so much right now, but at the same time, she wants to see him. Even though she ordered Judy to stop her if she tries to go to him first, she thinks that it's a waste of time. She wants to make up with him quickly and get along again. As a matter of fact, Julian never apologized first. Due to Leah's clumsiness, whenever she would come back with an injury, he would either rage out or be as cold as ice towards her. After being hurt by the way he reacted, she would also get angry, which would cause the two to fight even more. They would get upset and turn their backs on each other. However, Leah is not the type who can stand the silence, so their fights never lasted longer than a day. Contrary to her, Julian is the type of person who needs alone time. After crying like that, Leah feels refreshed now. It seems like she's planning to visit him later. Meanwhile, he is trying to calm himself down, afraid that he might hurt her more if he continues to talk. Eventually, he asks her to be a little more patient with him until he becomes better. He's aware of his mistakes and he's trying his best, but at the moment, that's all he can do. While Leah understands his side, she insists that he should also apologize first. In the end, they hug each other, hoping that things will soon be resolved. Later that night, Julian brings milk with syrup for Leah. Shortly after making up, he points out her thin clothing, thinking how she's so charming even after their fight. Usually they would go to sleep after making up with each other. However, they always end up fighting the next day or the next week again. Although they had short fights because of their personal differences, they became exhausted because it happened quite often. I'm exhausted as well. It's becoming a cycle at this point. One day, Leah wants to redecorate their room. Julian then insists on sending some servants to help her, so she just needs to wait. Because of her stubbornness, she gets hurt again. As expected, he scolds her once again. The same thing happens, and it has become a cycle now. Leah then insists on hugging it out to avoid fighting again. However, Julian refuses. Even though he yelled at her, she was the one apologizing again. He doesn't even give her a hug when she asks for it. Truthfully, she asks for a hug whenever they fight because he's always so cold afterward, so she can't help but feel insecure. Even if he loves her no matter what happens, she wants to hear those words from him. On the other hand, Julian sometimes gets angry when she asks because he feels like she doesn't trust him. One time, Leah stood in the rain to get his attention because he wouldn't even look at her. During that fight, he turned his back on her when she wanted them to reconcile. At this point, she feels deeply frustrated. He orders her to go back inside, but she refuses. Julian expresses that he needs to be alone first before talking and apologizing to her. However, it drives her crazy to wait for him. Eventually, he apologizes first. There are people in this world who can never understand each other. Some people want to talk it out after a fight, while others need some time by themselves. That's how it is for Leah and Julian. In the end, they embrace each other in the rain, making amends. He also vows never to leave her standing in the rain alone again, acknowledging that he should have done so from the start. I just hope this won't happen again ever. The following scene shows Leah feeling under the weather and having a cold. After examining her, the doctor informs Julian that although she does have a bad cough and fever, there is nothing to worry about since it's just a normal cold. Hearing this, he realizes that if he had not yelled at her and tried to stop her from running out into the rain, none of this would have happened. While Julian is sitting beside Leah's bed, she tells him that she's happy to spend time with him since they only see and talk to each other in the evening because they are both busy. Leah opened up to Julian that whenever he tries to shut her down during their argument, she gets so mad that she wants to leave him, and she starts to hate him when he does not hug or listen to her. After hearing this, Julian apologizes and tells her he never thought that way before. Leah also tells him that since she thinks that way, she also feels that Julian feels the same way, hence her eagerness to make up with him right away with her hugs and I love yous to each other. He then tells her he will never leave her and loves her so much. Oh my gosh, can this couple get any sweeter? A week later, Bella arrives at the mansion to visit Leah. While she and Julian are talking, Leah suddenly appears and excitedly hugs her, not minding that Julian is also there. She then happily tells Leah that she brought her favorite tarts. The following day, while Julian is preparing for a meeting, a maid bursts in front of his office and worriedly informs him that she has become sicker and seems to have pneumonia. While Julian is sitting beside Leah's bed, Bella tells him that Leah also got pneumonia after a cold when she was still young. As the days pass by, the doctor informed him that all the medicines are not working, that her condition is worsening, and there is a big possibility that she'll die. Leah suddenly opens her eyes and tells Julian that if she dies, he will be alone. Thus, she wants him to get married again. She also tells him that he must not die after her. Hearing this, he then tells her, while crying not to die, that he will never shut down during their arguments and that he will always listen to her. Leah then requests Julian take care of the walnut tree, that he can't let the tree rot, and that he may always remember her when looking at it. After Leah's death, Julian fulfilled Leah's request to take care of the tree, but he and the mansion became lifeless. The servants also left after Leah's death. Even when Julian turns 40, he keeps his promise to Leah and picks the walnuts every time they ripen. But he also feels like it is a curse since he could not die since Leah did not allow him to, and he could not forget about her. After picking the walnuts, he then returns to their bedroom and lays in the bed while grieving for Leah's death. As Julian wakes up, he suddenly notices that he is back at the royal palace and in front of the queen, just like in the past. He then thinks that he's just dreaming, but it is not important, since what is more important is if what happens in the future is the same as before, then he will be able to meet Leah. After talking to the queen, Julian realizes that all that is happening seems realistic. While riding in the carriage, his butler informs him that they will spend the night in the Viscount's place and leave tomorrow morning. After Julian is in his room, he realizes what is happening is not a dream and is not good because, just like before, he will be going to Riveron as Isabella's suitor and not as Leah's suitor. The following day, while Isabella is trying to converse with Julian, he stops her and tells her that she doesn't need to bother spending time with him, since in the future, she'll be marrying Duke Jaime Aurel and not him. He then says that even if it is difficult to believe, he already knows what will happen. After hearing Julian's explanation, Isabella again confirms to him that he will be marrying her younger sister. She then tells him that she doesn't know if she should believe what he's telling her, but she feels glad that she will marry Duke Jaime. Julian continues and tells her that she will also give birth to 3 children and live a happy life. Isabella then questions Julian's motives, since there must be a reason why he's telling her all those things. Julian answers, straightforwardly telling her that he wants to meet Leah. Hearing this, she smiles and agrees to let him meet Leah. While waiting for Isabella and Leah to arrive, Julian smiles because he had thought it would be challenging to make Isabella understand, but he had guessed wrong. His thoughts stop when a young Leah greets him. He then finds Leah cute since she was only 14 during this time. Julian now realizes why Isabella looked at him weirdly when he requested to see Leah. Yup, an older guy requesting to see a young girl is really weird. After staring at Leah, Julian kneels in front of her and asks her if she will marry him when she turns 17 and becomes a lady. After hearing his proposal, she asks him if he is joking, but then shrugs it off and brings him to a garden. Leah then shows Julian the flower seed that she planted and tells him that it will also bloom after 3 years. Seeing Leah's innocent and carefree face, he then tells her that he will meet her in 3 years. In the following days, Julian returns to the capital and informs the queen that he wants to marry Leah after 3 years, to which the queen gladly agrees. Next, Julian instructs his butler to demolish the manor and build a new one, where the high walls are lowered so that no one can die from falling. It was built using oak trees for insulation so that no one would catch a cold even in winter. He also furnished everything to Leah's liking so that she would not need to do anything. All these took about 3 years to complete. Yup, love really can make you do crazy and expensive things. While walking at the market, his butler asks Julian where they're going and why he is not on his way to meet Leah, but he continues to walk and stops at a dress shop. His butler then reminds him that he has already brought enough presents for Leah, but Julian smiles and tells him that Leah likes the dresses sold in this specific shop and that he would like to buy a dress made of light blue silk for her. While Julian and Leah are walking, she asks him why he proposed to her on the first day they met. He smiles and tells her it's because they were destined to be married. Leah then asks him if he likes young girls since she was just a child when he proposed to her. After hearing Leah's statement, Julian laughs and explains that even if she was 30 or 50, it will not matter because he is destined to marry her. Leah then asks him if there is anything that he wants her to do. Upon hearing this, he tells her that he doesn't want her to go out on rainy days, to which she quickly agrees. Thus, Julian and Leah get married just like they are fated to. As days pass, they are always happy, and even the year Leah turns 20, she is still healthy despite his worries. But the following summer came, and while Leah was busy tending the garden, lightning struck her, which caused her death, as if fate had planned it all over again. During Leah's burial, it rained hard, and Julian was still standing in her grave, remembering the day of the incident. He remembered instructing the maids to help her and checking on her occasionally, but it was still impossible to avoid a bolt of lightning from the sky. While still crying at her grave, he told her that he wanted to follow her, but then she would not like it. The poor man has gone through so much hardship. After the funeral, Julian joined the battle on the border. The year after that, he also fought in the Second Imperial War. But even if he brought victory to the kingdom and survived all the wars, he hoped to die in that battle in the hopes of following Leah. Several seasons passed, and just like Julian's past promise to Leah, he took care of the walnut tree and harvested it when it ripened. When he turned 40, Julian was again back in the past in front of the queen. Julian thinks to himself that even though being back in the past might feel like a miracle, he still needs to prepare before he meets Leah. He then tells the queen that he still needs to prepare some things and requests the queen to call him back in 3 years. Just like in the past, Julian again demolished the manor and refurbished everything to fit Leah's taste. Since it was not the first time he had done these things, it took him less time than before, thus he had a year left. While having tea, Julian's advisor asks him who Leah is, the sole reason which makes him reconstruct the whole manor. His advisor also asks him if they have ever met before, and if he has fallen in love with someone he has never met. Hearing this, Julian smiles and agrees with his advisor and proudly tells him that he does love Leah. Next, while traveling to see Leah, Julian promises to himself that he will do everything to protect her, and that he needs to tell her about everything once he meets her. Then, they can get married and live longer. Arriving at Riveron Island, Julian is shocked to see Leah in the garden wearing the blue dress he gifted her in the past, and is puzzled as to why she is now wearing it. While staring at Leah's blue dress, Julian questions himself from what point his dream started. What Leah is wearing is the dress that he gave her in the past. Leah then stares at Julian and asks him who he is. She approaches Julian and wipes his tears since he cries after realizing he is not dreaming. Leah then wipes his cheeks while warmly telling him to stop crying. Seeing Leah's innocent face, Julian stares at her, though he turns his back without saying anything he had planned to tell her before arriving in the manor. While traveling back home, Julian realizes that the Leah before him will disappear without a chance to shine if he marries her. Thus, in Julian's third life, he does not marry Leah. 1 year later, the queen rewards Julian with a 3-month vacation on the Riveron Island, since he won the battle at the border region. When he is about to decline the queen, a guard comes rushing to report that Leah is missing. He then tells the queen that being with Leah will only bring him trouble. Next, arriving at his office, Julian instructs one of his men to investigate Leah's whereabouts. Later, Julian learns that Leah stayed at a village after leaving Riveron Island. There, she can hide with Isabella's help. She then uses that time to write novels. As Julian reads Leah's novels, he notices a line from her book that tries to describe him during the day they met in the garden. His men then inform him that she dedicates her books to her husband, and rumors say that her husband has black eyes. After knowing this information, Julian stops his investigation, but then he regrets it soon after, because Leah again gets into an accident and drowns in the river. As of this moment, both Leah and Julian are standing in front of the board where her 242 cases of death are written. While she lightly touches the board, she tells him that she is still shocked that he has endured losing her repeatedly. Oh my, 242? How are you still a remotely sane man? Leah then asks him how Julian can look so calm and get through all this without going mad. He longingly tells her that in the end, time will start over again, and she will appear right before him again, thus waiting is easy. After hearing this, Leah stops crying in front of him. Seeing her sad expression, Julian holds her hand and comforts her by telling her everything is okay since they're together again. Meanwhile, Leah is still staring at Julian while feeling scared, even if she only has seen a glimpse of the lives he lived. She then realizes that she can't die before him. She can't leave him alone again. Julian then slightly shakes her and reminds her to breathe since she looks like she's having a panic attack. Afterward, Julian explains to Leah that although her handwriting may be different, she wrote the first part. Thus, Leah realizes that he always tells her about this loop they're in every lifetime they encounter. I think it's like a butterfly effect, kind of like her blue dress. After that, Julian tells Leah that long ago, a room was given to the sorcerers of the palace and old manors. Even after the sorcerers leave, their rooms are still untouched because there is a chance the magic might be inside. Julian then reminds Leah that she also likes this room a lot. She spends most of her time in this specific room because she thinks that magic can also happen there since it's a sorcerer's room. Even if everyone is afraid of magic, she still faces it head-on. After listening to Julian, Leah curiously asked him why the room now doesn't look like a room that someone can live in. He explained that the room used to have a high ceiling with an antique chandelier, but the ceiling collapsed during her 73rd life. Thus, in her next life, he built the place as small as possible. Julian continues to explain to Leah that the room has magic. When life begins again, he will return to the room, and it doesn't feel strange to him since he would stay in the room for many years after she left. He then realizes that the blanket Leah loves is also in the room, as is everything, including the board. After noticing this, Julian instructs one of his men to find the sorcerer who owns the room, Killian Aldman. He then continues to tell Leah that it took him 312 years since all the sorcerers were in hiding after being chased out or arrested. After learning about the sorcerer's whereabouts, Julian visited him and asked for his help, but Killian just told him that there are some fates that cannot be altered. Even after being rejected, Julian still explains to Killian that everything is not happening the same. There are times that he will meet, and something will always change each time he and Leah meet again. Seeing that Julian can't get any answers, he asks Killian why it is happening to him, though with a hint of dejection and hopelessness. Killian then replies by also asking why Julian's grandfather kicked him out of the manor and why the queen decided to kill all the sorcerers. To make his point, Killian continues to tell him it just happened to be you and not because you did anything wrong or special. Hearing this, Julian asks Killian if he's saying that he should just accept his cruel fate. After seeing his outburst, Killian states that he's obsessed, so he advises Julian to stop. Julian helplessly tells him that he can't stop now. Thus, Killian asks him if he's willing to give up Leah. He then replies to Killian that he is willing to do so as long as they can get out of this curse and Leah will have a long life. Seeing the desperation on Julian's face, Killian tells him that he's a greedy man. However, Killian also tells him that he will help him even if there is nothing he can tell him about his wife's death, although maybe he can get more clues. Thus, he instructs Julian to bring Leah to Killian after they are married again. Finally, there is someone who can explain the loop they're continuing to suffer from. The following day after their marriage, Julian visits Killian together with Leah. When they arrive at the store, Leah excitedly admires and looks at the ornaments. While she asks many questions about the different pieces, Killian patiently replies and even tells her that she can have some of the pieces she likes. Meanwhile, Julian notices that Killian acts like a grandfather with his favorite granddaughter toward Leah and thinks he is even trying to figure out something from her. While Leah is roaming around the store, she suddenly trips, but Julian quickly holds her and reminds her to be careful. Killian then approaches them and tells Julian that he worries too much, which Leah quickly agrees with, telling Killian that her husband does worry a lot, just like on their way to the store. Julian won't even make her look out the carriage window because she might fall out. Killian then tours them to the attic. Upon arriving at the attic, Leah is amazed to see so many books about magic. Seeing Leah's reaction, Killian tells her that she can take any book to read in secret but must burn it afterward. She declines and tells him that she will return them after, and if she can't return them, she will ask Julian to return them for her. While Leah is busy looking at the books, Killian tells Julian to follow him. Upon arriving near the table, Killian tells him that although magic concerning one's life is beyond his ability, he may be able to find out how to cut the chain that binds Leah and Julian together. He then instructs Julian to open the drawer, take the note when he dies, and hand it to him in the next life since he can't finish it during this life. After that day, Julian was quite busy and focused more on studying magic and spending time with Leah until she again died. Back in the present, while Julian and Leah are still sitting in the room, she asks him if he has ever died before. Julian replies that he did. Julian then tells Leah that his 193rd life was no different from the others. Then, while he visits Killian tells him that he will help him with the renovations of his estate, and all so he can go see her right away. Killian then advises not to get obsessed with the thought of saving her, and just think about how both he and Leah can be happy together. After hearing this, Julian quickly visits the queen and requests to marry Leah as soon as possible, which the queen also agrees to since she thinks it was love at first sight. Meanwhile, a young Leah happily approaches Isabella, excitedly telling her that she can also attend the ball. But Leah doesn't know that she'll be caught in a somewhat twisted fate. At the Riveron, Leah's father receives a letter from the kingdom and realizes that the next magic summer will be in 6 years. The following day, Julian goes to Riveron Island to see Leah. Upon arriving, Leah's father welcomes him and asks if he wants to meet Leah tomorrow since he might be exhausted from his travels. Julian then declines and tells him that he's fine, and Leah's father compliments him on being a passionate young duke. Later that night, Eli, Elizabeth, Isabella, and Leah introduce themselves to Julian. While Elizabeth and Isabella courteously introduce themselves, Leah, on the other hand, frowns and shouts at Julian while blaming him for ruining her magic summer. Still in shock at Leah's sudden outburst, Julian greets her while her sisters drag her away. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how the 193rd life of Julian and his first encounter with Leah begins. Leah and her family gathered in the room the following day while having snacks. Leah's mother asks Isabella if any gentlemen are to her liking, but Isabella answers that she has only been there a fortnight and only greetings with everyone have been exchanged. Leah then starts to feel excited about Isabella's magic summer and fantasizes about it, which will happen in 3 years. Anyhow, Leah's father reminds her that it will not happen since Leah already has a fiancé. Her father informs her that Julian wishes to marry Leah and will stay in their mansion for about 3 years, thus reminding her to behave more self-consciously. After hearing her father's explanation, Leah worriedly asks them if there's a mistake since it is Isabella's magic summer and not hers. But her father informs her that the queen sent a letter about their engagement, which is quite good news, and adds that organizing the event every 3 years to have peace for the next 7 years is pretty troublesome. Alone in her room, Leah's facade crumbles and she begins to weep. Isabella, sensing her sister's distress, tries to comfort her. She reminds Leah that their father sees them as pawns in his game of alliances. Afterward, while Leah is in her room, she starts ranting to her maid that she should also get to choose the person she'll marry since she's the only one who'll be living with him until she dies. Her maid then tries to convince her by telling her that Julian is perfect husband material since he is the queen's nephew and also has a vast estate near the capital. She also adds that he is handsome and acts and talks gracefully. After hearing her maid, Leah retorted back at her if all of what she said would give back her magic summer, which caused her maid to side with her and then start bashing Julian. The next day, Julian finds Leah in the garden. He attempts to engage her in conversation, but she rebuffs him, expressing her disinterest in spending time with him. Undeterred, Julian bravely asks her if she despises him. Seeing that Leah is annoyed with Julian tells her he will still make her choose during her magical summer, but he will stay by her side for the next 3 years. If she still doesn't like him after 3 years, he will leave. But he adds that he will not make her choose now since she'll quickly reject him and ask him to return her magical summer. Julian then confesses to Leah that he likes her and that nothing will make him happier if she likes him too. Annoyed by how confident Julian is, Leah starts to walk away, though Julian also follows her. Noticing that Julian is following, she tells him to stop doing so since she'll go to her room. But he just replies that he will escort her to her door. A year has passed, and Leah notices that Julian consistently escorts her to her room daily, and she has gotten used to him. Leah also realizes that every memory she made this past year includes Julian. One night, while Leah is drinking her tea, one of her maids tells her that she's growing more beautiful as the days pass, and she thinks that the power of love is truly incredible. Her maids also tell her that it's been a year since she and Julian started hanging out together, and they notice Julian's simple but caring acts towards her, like putting a blanket around her when cold or buying mountains of boxes of chocolate for her since she liked it. Most importantly, they tell her she looks like a girl in love when she's with Julian, which Leah quickly denies. Leah's maid then tells her she doesn't notice it since Julian is very gentle with her, thus, her maid suggests she will be the first to initiate physical contact. Hearing this, Leah blushes since she only learned about physical contact through romance novels, which is sleeping together. Thus, the following day, while Leah and Julian are in the garden, she opens up and proposes that they sleep together. The present Leah stops Julian from his storytelling and again asks him if she really did try to ask him to sleep with her, still scandalized by what she heard. The present Julian then confirms this and continues to tell her his 193rd life. Back in the garden, after hearing Leah's proposal, Julian asks her whose idea it is, to which she replies that it's the maid's idea. Julian then approaches her slowly, making her blush since she thinks he will kiss her on the lips. But then he kisses her on the cheeks and tells her not to think about it and that she can take her time. Oh, Julian, you really are so unpredictable. After that day, they started to hold hands, and Julian also gave soft kisses on Leah's cheeks after escorting her back to her room at night. These might be slight changes, but it is enough to shake Leah's heart. Time passes, and on Leah's 16th birthday, Julian gives her a book and a pen, which he believes will make her a great writer. He also tells her that it's all right that she doesn't love him yet. The following day, Leah noticed that she did not see Julian today, to which the maid also agreed since it had been an hour since they had helped her get ready, and usually by then he would already be by her side. One maid then informs Leah that she saw Julian leave on a horse through the front gate, and the maid thinks that he'll be visiting the town to help patrol since there are rumors of a suspicious person lurking around these days. After hearing this, Leah then tells the maids that she is tired of waiting for Julian, thus she announces that she will follow him instead. Oh no, I think something terrible will happen. Upon arriving at the town, Leah's maids voice their worries about her going out without guards, since there are rumors of a suspicious man floating around. But she tells her maids to relax since it's not her first time visiting the town. Meanwhile, at a small alley, Julian and the guards arrest a man, but the arrest does not proceed since one of the guards knows the man as someone who owns a shop in town. While Julian is searching for the suspicious man, he suddenly sees Leah and starts to panic, since he notices that she has no guards. As he approaches her, Julian notices a man at the back of Leah with a knife. Thus, he quickly covers her when he sees that the man is about to stab Leah. Because of his actions, Julian is the one who was stabbed in the back. After that incident, Leah starts visiting Julian, even though he does not come to visit her. They spend more time together and marry when summer arrives. Leah lived until she was 33 years old. Back in the present, Leah comments that she lived a pretty long life during Julian's 193rd life. Julian then tells Leah that it is the end of his story, and Leah quickly reminds him that he did not tell her about how he died. Julian tells Leah that they also had a daughter named Delphina Riveron Reynal during that time. Back in Julian's 193rd life at the Reynal estate, Julian and Leah were preparing for Leah and their daughter to travel back to Riveron Island. While waiting for the carriage to be ready, their daughter cutely approaches them. Noticing his daughter approaching them, Julian tells her that he will soon follow them after work and reminds their daughter not to cause any trouble. When Leah and her daughter are about to leave, Julian asks him if he should join them, but Leah tells him that he must finish his work. While Leah's carriage leaves, Julian stares at it as it moves further, feeling weird that something terrible might happen. Thus, after 4 days, Julian follows Leah and his daughter. While traveling, he realizes that after Delphina is born and Leah turns 30, it feels like everything is solved and the curse is lifted. But everything comes crashing as he arrives at the burning manor. Julian's heart stopped when he saw Leah and his daughter burning in the lavender field. One body is tightly holding onto a smaller hand, and on the finger of the body was the same ring as his. After that incident, Julian then kills himself over and over again, thus that is the reason for his death. In the present, Leah hugs Julian while crying. He then reminds her that the story about his mother and father walking every night and hugging was made up by her for him to tell anybody who will ask about his parents, since they and their daughter always walk and hug each other at night. Julian also tells Leah that she is the one who said to him that memories can also be made, and he is surviving by relying on those words. I'm bawling my eyes out because this series is actively destroying my heart in every chapter. Upon realizing that killing himself will not lead him to anything, Julian starts to live again. Thus, he accepts the Queen's order and informs her that he will head to Riveron Island. Upon arriving at the Riveron, Isabella greets and welcomes Julian. He quickly acknowledges this and tells Isabella to pardon him, but he wants to meet with Leah, the 4th daughter of the House of Riveron. After hearing this, Isabella looks at him questioningly and tells him that Jane is the 4th daughter. Julian then tells her that he's talking about Leah, the 4th daughter out of the 7 of the House of Riveron. Isabella then starts to explain to Julian that there are only 6 daughters in Riveron's house, and the 4th daughter is Jane. Hearing this, Julian realizes that Leah doesn't exist in this life, thus he quickly returns to his manor. Upon arriving, Julian visits Killian, who is still bringing the book to him. He then informs Killian about everything. After hearing the information, Killian tries to explain to him that every action has its consequences, thus, one person's life ends and returns, and someone will have to fill in the gaps that are made. Julian then realizes he can't die anymore and asks Killian what he must do. Killian tells Julian that even if he speculates this, maybe he can bring back Leah by saving someone destined to die. Thus, in one of Julian's life memories that he lost count of, he started to save countless people. He saved people from minor accidents at the estate and also those in big wars. Hence, thanks to Julian, many people escape misfortune. He saved people over and over again, waiting for Leah to come back. Finally, Julian is waiting for the day when he returns to the Queen's Palace again and is instructed to head to Riveron Island, which he quickly agrees to. Julian then starts his journey using only a horse, since traveling by carriage takes longer. As Julian and his horse are resting, he notices someone playing in the fields, so he moves closer to see who it is. As he steps closer, he first thinks that it is Delphina, but when he clearly sees the face, he realizes that it is Leah. Aren't we all glad that Leah is back? While seeing a young Leah happily playing with the flowers, Julian feels relieved and at peace knowing that he is back in a world with Leah in it. After confirming Leah's existence, Julian returns to his manor and instructs his butler to head out of the castle to the market. They find Killian's store in the 15th sector on the right street and tells them to bring Killian Aldman to his manor. Upon arriving in the room, Killian tells Julian that it is his first time visiting. Hearing this, Julian becomes serious and tells Killian that he wants to end everything. Killian asks for clarification about Julian's notion of ending everything. Julian explains to Killian that he does not want to meet Leah anymore, that he does not wish for happiness, and that it doesn't even matter if he loses his life. Julian then starts to kneel and cry in front of Killian while telling him that he wants to die, which Killian reminds him that he tried killing himself before, but it did not go as planned. After hearing this, Julian begs Killian to turn him into a fool instead, or turn him into someone who knows absolutely nothing. Seeing how devastated Julian is, Killian knows that he cannot say anything to him since nothing will be able to comfort him. Thus, he just gently pats his head, thinking that it must have been an unimaginable path for him and how horrible it must have been for him. After their talk, Julian and Killian are in the dining room. Killian comments that it has been a while since he has had such a feast, and also thanks Julian for the meal. After they're done eating, Julian instructs his butler to serve Killian the special peach. Julian explains that the peach is picked from the enormous tree in Reynald's most famous orchard on the first day of June. It is said that whoever eats a peach that grows on top of that tree will live a very long life. Killian then starts to question Julian if he's going to die since he prepared such a big feast for him. Julian just smiles and tells Killian that he should have invited him before. He is so focused on his life that he does not think about it at all, which he also regrets. When Julian hands Killian the peach, he tells Killian that his mother never allowed him to eat a peach from this specific tree, and he can only imagine how sweet it must taste. He then remembers how tall and enormous the tree is, and he used to think that touching it would have a magical effect. But his mother died, and he started to rule the estate. Julian then continues to explain that the owner of the orchard always brings him the peach. Even if his mother ordered them to cut down and throw away the peach, they still could not dare to cut the tree of the former duchess. When he turned 20, the man begged him to try the peaches, which he did since he can't refuse him when he pleads. After hearing Julian's explanation, Killian gravely tells him that the peach must be thrown away and that it's the reason for his never-ending life. Killian then tells Julian that in the past, his mother brought him to the Duke's orchard and asked him to cast a spell on the peaches. A spell that will make the person who eats the peaches live an eternal life. Since one's life continues repeatedly, there might come a day when that person forgets his old love and chooses her instead. Killian also adds that another spell is cast, and that is to make the lover of the person who eats the peach die no matter what. How devastating it is for Julian since he gave it to Leah multiple times. After hearing this, Julian asks Killian if he really cast the spell that his mother requested. Killian tells him that he did not, but he is sure that someone else must have done it. Killian then adds that the ironic thing is that the Duke died in the battle before he could return to the estate and eat that peach. Seeing how the Duchess orders that every peach tree be cut down and all its fruits thrown out, they can assume that dark magic has been cast. Julian then asks Killian if his cause of death is always the same since his wife Leah always dies from a different cause each time, and adds that if he tries to stop the cause of death, something else will happen, and it goes on and on. Killian tells Julian that it is the power of dark magic where it does what it is asked of it in whatever way possible and no matter how. Thus, he suggests that Julian throw away all the peaches so that his life will not anymore be as is. After dinner, Julian, with all seriousness, instructs the servants to make sure they throw all the peaches away so that no one will take a bite of them. He also adds that they must get rid of all the other peaches from the same tree and make sure no one eats them. After instructing the servants, Julian realizes that Leah's death is all because of him, and that if he had not met Leah, she would not have died. It is all because of his indifferent father, his mother's obsessive love, and the orchard keeper's goodwill. Julian feels that he wants to blame all of them, but even if he does, it will not make the past disappear. Thus, all he can do is stop eating the peach from now on. Back in the present, Leah asks Julian why he always gives her the peach. He then replies that he does not know how long she will live, and that those who eat the peach live forever. But even if the curse is stopped, accidents can still occur. She can die from an illness, thus he does not want to risk such dangers, as he knows he's greedy. Since his selfish wish is not wanting to see his loved one die at a young age, he wants to prolong Leah's life as long as possible and see her live a long and happy life. Julian then remembers that in the past, he tried to make sure that Leah would not fall in love with him and that he made sure that Leah would win the peach. He then starts a plan to not interact with her so she'll not fall for him. He will only visit his estate and watch her live her life, a life that does not include him. One specific Julian starts to execute his plan to let Leah eat the peach by washing it and giving it to her for her to taste. He then asks if Leah has ever tasted the peach before, to which she replies that it was quite sweet and tasty and melted in her mouth. Hearing this, Julian is shocked but tries to ask her if it is the peaches that are sold in other places, but Leah informs him that it was given by him. Seeing Julian's tense face, Leah tells him that she's just kidding and that she has never had any of it before, but she hears that the peaches from Reynal are so soft. As he is about to hand the peaches, some water drips from his hands, which Leah then licks. Julian had no idea that it was Leah's third time meeting him. They might be able to get together quicker if he had known. Still, Leah's pretty glad that he brought it up the first time in her third life. She looks at Julian as she dramatically puts her hand on her chest, asking him how many times he intends to keep her living the same life over and over again. Julian smiles as he casually tells her that she would have fallen in love and married him in one of those lives. Leah grunts. How can she even fall in love with him when he always disappeared right after giving her that peach? The sides of his lips rise up as his hands slowly slide on her waist, looking at her with eyes full longing. He pulls her towards him, saying no matter what, she always did fall in love with him. They stare, smiling at each other as their faces slowly become closer and closer. And just with that, they share a passionate kiss full of love. On the balcony, looking at the beautiful stars in the sky, Julian asks Leah if he ever did die in one of her lives. Leah isn't really sure about it. He just suddenly disappeared the moment he gave her the peach. The peach! Suddenly, she remembers the time where he showed up and brought her poor ex-husband's peach. She really wonders why he did that, though. Julian then asks her if her ex-husband dies, but Leah can't barely remember what happened since time turned back when she turned 40. But even so, she is sure that they had lived 100 years or more. Evil people tend to have a long life, you know? Julian looks at her and innocently smiles as he tells her that he can kill them all for her. Leah looks back, asking him to stop saying that with a smile on his face. He looks at the sky and wonders that if what Leah said is the truth, it would mean she didn't love any of those people. And that was her problem. She paid the price of getting married to just anyone. In countless times that she ate the peach and she died, she tells Julian that she never regretted it, not even once. She met the person that she loved and lived happily. There would be nothing to regret, even if death ended it. Julian is too shocked to even say something. Leah leans on his shoulders. She closes her eyes as she admits that even so, she still doesn't want him to die. She's so glad that she didn't eat the peach that time. Julian is surprised that she didn't eat it, but Leah reasoned that they were too busy talking in the garden, that's why. Suddenly, Leah asks why he decided to marry her. Like what he said, Julian wasn't really planning to marry her. He just wanted to see her in that dress one last time and was going to stop there and wait for the next life. But then, after seeing her in it, he knew he couldn't just give up. That's why he's taking this gamble and risking his life to restart with her. He just really loves her that much. Julian and Leah share vows, but in the middle of creating their happy memories together, it's inevitable that there are also people who create gossip. Rumors are saying that after their houses join forces, they become powerful and that they're considered a threat to the kingdom. This somehow bothered Leah, but Julian isn't letting that get into her. He doesn't even think it's true since it seems like the king likes seeing the both of them happy. Although they are both worried and had times of sadness, those are nothing but small obstacles for them to overcome. The two of them will live a happy life, and their happiness will last as long as the two are together. On the day of Leah's 37th birthday, they are on their way to their second wedding. Julian still remembers how Leah wanted to get married in the middle of the lavender forest. They're even planning to take a stop in a famous bakery shop when all of a sudden, they heard the horse neigh. It seems like someone's attacking them. Julian takes a look out the window. He sees a crest that belongs to House Montes, the house of the queen's husband, and it seems like they're believing those gossips. The attackers suddenly put the carriage on fire. Leah hurried and followed Julian, but everything happened so fast. Right now, she's looking at her husband on the floor, covered in his own blood. On the verge of death, Julian's looking at Leah, who's begging for him not to die. The woman he shared memories with, the woman he deeply loved, is crying in front of him. His hand slowly cupping her face, trying to convince her that he's all right. He lived for a long time already, and he was happy. He really didn't know that he would die like that, but he was happy that he lived his life with her, the ruler of his life, his wife. At 42, Julian died in his wife's arms. He lived a happy life. Leah is reading her sister Isabella's letters. She's been constantly sending her letters and checking up on her. She really appreciates it. Isabella really cares for her. It's been 2 years since the death of Julian, and she's still stuck. Who wouldn't when you witness the love of your life die in your arms? A year after his death, she tried to go out and socialize. That was what Julian wanted to happen, for her to live a good life. But that day ended badly when people kept pestering her to move on and date another bachelor, as if it was so easy to move on, as if her memories and love for Julian would disappear instantly. She just couldn't do that. She can't love anyone but Julian. Ever since that day, she disappeared from society and spent her time in her home where it's filled with memories of Julian. That was the love of her life. It will never be easy for her to just forget him and move on. One day, Isabella visits her. They look very happy to see each other, but then Leah suddenly holds her hand, telling her that she has something to share with her. In the garden, Leah shared everything about the peach and about what had happened. Isabella's worried about what will happen if she eats the peach. What if she turns 40 and doesn't go back? But Leah just looks at her and smiles as she tells her that she'll die. Isabella stands up to say something, but Leah tells her that she knows that Julian said that she could be happy if she stays alive. But when did she even listen to her? They both lived happy lives. Even if she takes her own life, and even if Julian died like that, it won't change the fact that they were happy. They talked about how Julian's life isn't a failure. He might have died in a sad way, but he didn't live a sad life. Rather, he lived a happy life, but ended in a sad way. But him dying like that doesn't change the fact that he lived a happy life. That's the same for her too. No matter what way she dies, she still had days where she lived in happiness. For Leah, her life's already complete. There's no meaning in living anymore. The only thing left in her life right now is meaningless pain. She stares at Isabella and tells her that there's nothing that can be done, just in case she regrets what might happen. Isabella notices the pain in her sister's eyes, and instead of saying something, she just looks at her and smiles as she asks her to celebrate her birthday together. They celebrated Leah's birthday together with her parents, sisters, nephews, and nieces. Those children, seeing them, reminds her of Ladelphia, whom she only heard about in Julian's stories. Sitting on her bed, Leah's getting ready to sleep when all of a sudden her sister barges into her room to sleep with her. The light is disturbing her sleep. She opens her eyes only to see that she's in a familiar place. A woman is in front of her, greeting her a happy birthday and telling her about a person that she will choose. She knows instantly what this is about. She knows that she's back to being 17. She runs and runs as she sees a door and immediately enters. There, she sees him, her love, the greatest man in her life, Julian. He's holding a peach. He looks at her and asks if River on Islands also has peach orchards. Tears streaming from her eyes as she answers no, there's none. But she tries the peach of Arsenal. Julian seems confused, seeing her cry, so he asks her what happened, but Leah just smiles and tells him about the walnut tree. Julian's face is instantly painted with shock. He runs towards her and hugs her. After everything, they met each other just like that. Now, ahead of them lies an eternity of time, and they know they can be together forever. May that lifetime be for them. Leah is writing in her diary about what happened that day. She woke up earlier than Julian. She wanted to wait for him to wake up, but she also has to get ready to welcome her sister. So she just decided to write a letter for him to read when he wakes up. However, when she's about to leave, Julian calls her, his face full of worry. He completely thought she disappeared after leaving behind a letter, and that made him so scared. Julian didn't even read the letter. Rather, he instantly ran to look for her. In the afternoon, she met with her sisters and chatted as always. They were complaining about their husbands while she was bragging about hers. Or they just thought she was bragging because when she told them about what happened in the morning, they completely thought it was cute while she thought it was somehow a flaw. In the middle of their chat, her sister Beth tells them that those who brag about their relationships are mostly those who had something lacking in their relationship and that haunted her. At night, right after writing in her diary, Leah looks for her husband but can't see him in their room. She roamed around and eventually headed to the secret room, where she saw Julian looking at something. This is something she forgot to tell her sister, his flaw, his overly liking for the secret room. There are many things in the secret room, things that Julian and her collected in their previous lives. It's like a storage room for their memories, and it doesn't mean anything now. Lying on the bed, Leah still can't stop thinking about it. Suddenly, Julian moves closer to her, asking if there's something bothering her. She wanted to save it for tomorrow, but they might be too busy to open that conversation, so she had no choice but to tell him about it. She tells him that she wanted to get rid of the secret room because he's been going there too often, and she thinks that he's thinking about other girls whenever he's there. Julian didn't realize that he's there too often. His eyes widen when he heard her talking about him thinking about other girls. He innocently looks at her and asks if she doesn't like it whenever he's thinking about another Leah. See? Julian's thoughts are of you, Leah. They might be from different lifetimes, but it's still you. Leah finds it funny. All the Leahs that Julian met, loved, and lived with were her. However, there are differences in their memories. There are Julian's lives that she doesn't remember, and her lives that Julian doesn't remember. Still, they only loved each other in all those lives. But seeing him reminiscing his memories upsets her. She is pretty sure he doesn't understand her, but she's wrong. He understands. He understands and feels the same way too with the memory that Leah has, but he doesn't know about. But those lives that she doesn't know about, those were full of her. He spent all of his time in the secret room next to her, with all of those memories and things that reminded him of her. He cups her face and smiles, wanting in hopes of comforting her. After that day, they go to the secret room together and reminisce about all of their memories in the past. Before she can even realize, the heavy feelings that Leah carries are all replaced with love. After a few months, the reminiscing of all their stories came to an end. The room became a place full of memories for the both of them. This makes Leah think that if one day their hair turns white and they grow old, they'll want to die in this room full of memories of them. Julian's morning usually starts with watching Leah sleeping, then asking the servants for tea. Then he'll arrange the curtains. When Leah's already awake, he always compliments her for doing well. May it be by waking up, taking a walk, and even drinking tea to the point that it annoys Leah. But how can she stay annoyed when Julian kisses her whenever she starts giving him an attitude? However, for someone with such a great start in the morning, Julian's face looked like he hadn't gotten enough sleep. Julian looks like a zombie while ranting at Edmund about his problem. He hasn't got any rest for a week already since whenever he wakes up, Leah's always gone. Sometimes he finds her in the library, in the dining room, or even in the garden. Edmund suggests that maybe she just became a morning person. That's what Leah told him too, but Julian thinks that she's not sleeping at all. With what's happening, it seems like there's something bothering her, and the right thing to do about it is to confront her. While Leah's in the garden, Julian tries to talk about the issue to her since he's so worried that she's not sleeping at all. However, no matter how much he tries, it ends up with her telling him that even if he keeps on asking, she has nothing to say about it. In his office, Julian is getting frustrated. He's worried she might get sick with what she's doing, and he knows he has to do something. So for her to sleep, he tries to let her drink tea, takes her to the doctor, and even to the astrologist, but none of those made her feel better. He really cares about her so much. It's so sweet. On their way to sleep, Leah tells him how thankful she is for what he has done, but it's too much. Still, she's so happy, despite her fear of what if this is all a dream. She's happy even with those painful worries that she has, and if they disappear, everything will be worse. Leah is so happy that it feels like she's in a dream, though haunted when feeling like Julian's not there when she wakes up. She's afraid that she'll wake up in the world where he's dead. She had seen him die once in her arms, and it was the most painful memory of her life. Julian hugs and comforts her, telling her that he has now become better after experiencing it several times, so it's all good now. With those mere words of comfort, Leah somehow feels relieved hearing those from him. It feels as if she's the happiest woman in the world. Laying on the bed while facing each other, Julian asks if she would like to tell her worries to him the next time. Leah is still confused whether she should. Julian's still staring at her and asks her who she would tell that to if not him. There she realizes, right, who would she tell that to if not him? With mind at ease after their discussion, they snuggle with each other as they spend their night together talking about how happy and content they are with each other. Background story number 1, the perfect wedding. The wedding will be held in the lavender field. Then Leah will hold a bouquet of hydrangea flowers, and a bard will sing a song. Those are all Leah's dream weddings ever since she's a child. But for some reason, Julian is worried about the wedding. Well, to his credit, something always happens on the day of the wedding. In their weddings in the past, everyone got food poisoning. Leah almost fell down, a war broke out, the choir bored them to death, and a mole popped out and the wedding cake was ruined. Leah lost his ring too. They couldn't find it until that life ended. Killian smiles while looking at his tea and asks him if he was unhappy about it, but Julian just smiles and calmly says no. They're all happy memories for him still. Despite those wedding failures, they still treat them as happy memories. He's so pure. Killian asks why Julian came to see him. Julian explains that this time he wants everything to be perfect and for it to go the way Leah wants it to be. They want them to have complete happiness this time without any worry. So for that to happen, he needs Killian's help. Julian needs his magic to watch the wedding and prevent bad things from happening. Julian explains more about the details of the wedding, about the song, flowers, lavender fields. He even showed him Leah's perfect dream wedding that she had drawn when she was a child. And even before that, he asked him about the bard. Truly, he wants everything to be perfect. Before he even left, he asks Killian again if he'll come to the wedding, to which he says that he will. Seeing the man hold no grudge against him despite knowing about the spell, it seems like Killian got more attached to him than he thought. He silently wishes him to live long since there's no need for him to worry anymore. He shall have his perfect wedding this time. Background story number 2. It was Julian's 85th life, or perhaps 86th. That life was a little strange. He returned to his 17-year-old self. It was even strange enough for him seeing Edmund in his younger self talking about his wife Christine. It was their first time seeing each other, and it seems like Edmund really fell in love with her. At night, he's standing in front of Leah's room in Riveron Island. He really misses her. The light of her room is still on, and he wonders if she's awake. However, when he takes a look at her, she's shivering due to the cold. How could she not even catch a cold when her window is slightly open? He slowly walks inside and sits on her bed. He can't help but get worried because she catches cold quickly and takes a long time to recover. Julian puts his hand on her forehead, and in an instant, Leah smiles in her sleep, feeling relieved with the warmth she's feeling. When Julian opened his eyes again, he was in front of the Queen as usual. He supposed time loses its way, as people do at times. He must have been caught in a crack. That short encounter, because of that hand that touched her forehead, Leah still can't hate her father completely, just because of that one moment. Silly, isn't it? As we close this story, Julian and Leah's tale of enduring love through countless lives and trials stands as a powerful reminder of love's resilience. Despite heartache and challenges, their unwavering connection shines brightly, proving that true love transcends time and adversity. Their journey ends not with goodbye, but with a hopeful promise of eternal togetherness. Thank you for following their story. May your own paths be filled with love and lasting joy. Like and subscribe for more stories like this.